Oh, hey, what's up, everybody? Didn't realize that the credits finished rolling there. So, what's going on? Hi, everybody. Hope you guys are all settled in good and looking forward to a little bit of a talk tonight. We'll see how long I can keep going tonight. Probably an hour or two, like usual, probably. I don't know. We'll see how animated and interested I get. But welcome to everybody. We got Wyatt Coverdale, we got Atropa, we got Star Ruby Corsi, and we've got Zap Dubious Knows Nothing. What's up, Zap Dubious? I'm sure you know a little something. But, you know, my candle burnt out, and it's like the dregs of the candle where, like, you know, you gotta, like, screw with it to, like, make it burn. So, you know what? It's a little risky this close to the curtain. But let me see if I can set this thing on fire after all. Come on. There we go. It's a little risky, so I got to be careful. Gonna make a little bit of a quick wick here. You know, I guess maybe I'm like really like I'm a stickler for not wasting candle wax. I don't know what it is. Maybe like once upon a time my family were like candle makers or something. And like it was made out of beeswax, and we knew the value of a good candle. Actually, it's an interesting thing if you look up the history of candles. Don't ask me why this is important. If you look at the history of candles, you will find that you know, the things that we use for candles are not really like what they are. So like in the Middle Ages, candles were actually like a stick, like a little string that was like dipped in some beeswax or some oil, and it might only burn for a little while because people didn't really spend all night, you know, trying to be active like we do. They would go to bed at what we would consider a reasonable hour. So yeah, that's something interesting, isn't it? Ooh, that's going good. So it's a little near some cloth. If it goes off, I got a fire extinguisher somewhere in the house. I'm sure it'll be fine. If there's some hysterical running, you know what's happening. But let me. It's a good foot away. That should be enough. So I decided to change some things up today. I took the great advice of like cleaning my area today. Someone captured that soundbite. Cleaning my area today, and because it had gotten really cluttered. I guess because of the kind of person I am. I've always been like a lazy kind of person where I like things clean. Don't get me wrong. I'll clean it really good, and then I just won't do it again for a while. So I'll do a really thorough, like, make it nice and neat, and then it'll be like a year before I touch it again. But I'm the kind of dirty where it's not really garbage. I'm lazy, so I bring things to within arm's reach of myself. I make like a circular nest of shit, and then I have to like clean it up, because then it just gets, after a while, it just starts piling up, and it becomes like a little like no man's land kind of border that like you can't cross, and then it's like, ugh. So I spent the whole day doing that instead of writing or anything. I was gonna write today. I really wanted to write more today, but yeah, it was a pain in the tuchus. And but I got it all cleaned out. We had actually a mole that had invaded this little space behind me, you know, behind the curtains and behind the cabinets and everything that's back there, because obviously this is a facade back here. I have like real life back there, which I don't really get into very often anymore, but I have stuff back there, storage and stuff. But there was like a little, we call them morsels. We had a little, I guess it's actually a shrew. It's not actually a mole. And I had to take care of that. So I got some no-kill traps, and we got rid of them. But man, those things shit like a lot. Like, I know mice and rats take lots of poop. I didn't know a little mole like the size of like my thumb could make a heaping pile of shit over like just such a short period. Like, what is it eating? Like, I mean, I know they don't eat the food in the house. I think they're mostly bug eaters and stuff. They don't really get into your food, but yeah. And our house is pretty full of bugs and spiders. So yes, Atropa, I'm a surrounder. I like that. You're a surrounder. That's a great. I didn't know that was a word. That's a good one. I'm not a hoarder though. Like, I don't. Like, I have a pretty reasonable amount of possessions. Like, if you put me in a home, like a reasonable size apartment by myself, it would be pretty Japanese looking. I would probably have, it might eventually get cluttered, but it would be like one little nest spot and then everything else would be pretty empty. I think that's what would end up happening. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not a neat person at all. I've gotten better over the years. Like, I used to be much worse. But yeah, no, I don't do that cleaning thing very well. Nope, not me. I like to be clean. So, what's up, Ace? It's been a while, brother. Good to see you, man. How's the music going? Good to see you. Gogo says, "Hi, legend. How are you?" Yeah. Yeah, that's right, Atropa. The shrews, they have eyes, but I don't know. This one almost looked like it didn't. It had really tiny little pinhole spots where the eyes should go, but I didn't see any. So it looked like a blind shrew. It could have been a blind. I know like sometimes moles and shrews can have eyes, but they sometimes, usually don't. Sometimes they do. I don't know, something like that. Yeah, so I didn't come prepared with anything in mind to really talk about. So we're going to be going by everybody's questions. We will be running the gamut of topics ranging from spirituality, mysticism, etc., to current events and things of that nature. Been a lot of nice developments for me in terms of, sort of getting re-inspired and back on track. I don't know what that's going to translate into work-wise, but it's been nice to sort of have inspiration again a little bit and to sort of have a vision of what I want it to be. Doesn't mean it'll happen. It may just be another false start. I tend to be doing that a lot lately. But maybe this cleaning my room thing really will work this time and it'll get me back on the ball. What I really need to do is declutter my computer area next. Like, I decluttered behind me. Now I got to declutter this. And what I really need is to be rich enough to afford a maid or something like that. And I will pay her double or him double. I don't care. Him or her, don't matter. I don't know. I guess usually they are like women these days. But I'll pay them double. Don't care. I'll pay them double. I just can't afford even single. So I'm going to let you guys set the tone for tonight's conversation. I will be going through the chat. If you guys want me to respond to something or to have an answer for you or to discuss something, the 3 accepted methods run between putting it in all caps. That way I could see it from across the room, tagging me in it so that it pops up a little blip that tags me, or of course, you can super chat me. I do appreciate those, of course. They're not required, but that is a sure thing. Super chats will always be the first questions that I answer to the best of my ability. Hopefully I know the answer, otherwise it's kind of a waste. But yeah. Yep. Okay, so Leo Blandford asked, do you have any information on Belphegor by any chance? Interestingly enough, talking about clutter and mess. The demon of sloth, the deadly sin. All right, so Belphegor, here's the thing, okay? Medieval Christians and medieval society in general demonized various entities from other cultures. And so you have the gods of Babylon, the gods of the Philistines, the gods of Canaan. It's usually Babylonian gods, and the gods of Egypt to a lesser degree. Whatever the medieval people had access to, the scholars, whatever they had access to in terms of historical information, they would have approached that from their dogmatic position. Again, I want to make sure it's very clear to everyone, I am not in opposition to people who are Christian necessarily. I do not like the Christian church. I do not like the Orthodox mainstream Christian religion. I have a certain sweet spot for Gnosticism that is, passable, although Gnostics thought the material world was evil, and they got a few things in a way that I wouldn't have approved or wouldn't believe, but at least they weren't burning people at the stake. Well, to be fair, the church will argue that they never burned anyone at the stake. The state did, but the state wouldn't have done it if not for the church. So, to be clear, the medieval Christians, particularly the medieval theologians, had to sort of address these different entities in society, in folklore and in history and in the Bible. And occultists wanted to work with things, we'll say. And, I had a friend of mine actually point out very clearly that it seems likely that at least some, not all, but at least some of the demonization of pagan spirits was done by Christians. Now, don't quote me like it's my idea, but I like this idea. Like, I run it up on a flagpole and I salute it. I think this is actually a very, very intelligent thing that my friend said. The demonization of these pagan spirits was done so that Christians could still work with them in a magical context, but could utilize, Christian symbolism and mythology to, sort of push them around, right? So you might be in trouble, for example, if you were a pagan, if you were going around going, I worship, Zeus or something like that, you might get in trouble. But if you worked with whatever analog would have been there that was demonized, or sanctified, because don't forget, they didn't make all of them evil. Some were sort of, seen as angels instead, or good guys instead. And that's what they did. But a lot of them were demonized, or they did both. They sort of had a demon version and a not demon version. I will say that if it came from Babylon, though, like if it came from Greece, they might have found a way to, at the very least, respect it. Like the stuff that they knew, because medieval people idolized Greece and Rome, especially Greece, though. That was a big deal. They idolized Greece and Rome. And so a lot of that stuff would have been sort of given a soft pass, if you will. But stuff from Babylon or anything like that came through the Christian tradition, so folklore about Baal and the Philistines and somewhat to the Egyptians as well. Although we do have to remember that the Greeks and the Egyptians were like this for a while. So, I guess they get a pass too to some degree. You notice you don't get quite as much of that. But I don't think most medieval Christians had that much information about those things. It's not like they had archaeology at the time. And the Christian culture, the Dark Age, Middle Age culture was very much about control, and that meant controlling information. So whatever was there was probably repressed or suppressed, and kept in in church hands if it ever had it. So they would have potentially demonized things. So Belphegor, getting back around to things, obviously is a play on ball. Okay, it's a ball. It's certainly meant to be a ball. Just like a lot of people, like I get a lot of people pissed off at me because I know history and I understand that Beelzebul is supposed to be Baal, right? Is supposed to be Baal. It's supposed to be one of the balls. It was the god of Ekron from the Philistines, and the Philistinians would have worshipped Babylonian spirits. They would have changed their names. Dagon is different, but it's sort of the same as Poseidon, Enki, if I remember correctly. I have to do my researching. I think that's what it was. So they definitely had like a lineage from their gods all the way back to Sumeria. So that we're kind of talking about like updated versions of these things. Andrew Colt says one of the balls. And yes, Atropa, I've never read that book. I'm sorry, I've never even heard of it. So, yeah, I might have to give me a synopsis of it on Discord. Maybe I'll take a snoop if it's I don't read enough. So, I'll probably like, I don't know. I used to read a lot when I was younger. I used to like gobble a book every 2 or 3 days. Now I can't read I like to write now. Like I've read enough. I want to write now, which is terrible. Honestly, it's really a bad habit. But, so Belphegor, usually called the demon of the gap, which is interesting. What is it? Demon of the abyss, right? Or do they mean, demon of the gap in the toilet bowl? Because that was often how he's portrayed, as a demon of the privy, a demon of the shitbox. And what is interesting is it's almost like they're making fun of the fact that some people get really good ideas on the toilet, because, put your hand in the chat if you know what I'm talking about. A lot of people get good ideas while they're sitting down taking a dump. And of course, Belphegor is a demon that's associated with giving people, lofty ideas, clever plans to make money and all kinds of stuff like that. And he's considered a demon of sloth, okay? Now, sloth is an interesting concept. Obviously, it's a negative concept, and it means laziness, basically. It means to be a slob. It means to be a lazy slob, a do-nothing, a layabout, you know, a lout, all that kind of stuff. And it's sort of meant to exemplify like a dreamer, like somebody who just kind of sits around and doesn't do things in a lot of ways. What is interesting, though, is that in my own interpretation of how I've seen things when sort of investigating and looking into things and encountering spirits, you know, in my own way, Belphegor is quite easily sort of like the spirit that encourages you to learn Wu Wei, which is the Taoist principle of inaction. By inaction, it doesn't mean you don't do anything. It means that you don't get, you don't try to assert dominance over things. You just sort of like, you go with the flow, quite literally. So one of the interpretations of Belphegor, at least the one that I prefer, is that that is what it is for. It is sort of, the risk, though, is to become a bum, to become a lazy person, right? Because taking Wu Wei too far, that is to say, literally trying to be a lazy slob and do nothing because you think that's enlightened somehow. And there are examples of this. There are hermits that's the thing. They don't do anything. They just sit and people have to come and take care of them. And they just, you know, they would die if it wasn't for their followers, who just come and feed and bathe them and everything. So there is that. And, that's one interpretation of it. At least that's the one that I go with. I have yet to formally work with that spirit. My wife's had dreams about it, though. So we'll leave it at that. Preston Jackson's talking about something that's banned. I don't know if that's the book that you guys are talking about, Son of Gnosis. I don't know. I find that unfortunate that it's banned because, in all seriousness, I feel like those who practice Lovecraftian magic should really be able to explore more, as I've been wanting to learn that myself. I'm not sure what Preston's referring to. Did I miss a chat up above? I don't know. Yeah, Ace, Fleshy is no longer doing the live streams. He's still sort of active on the server a little bit. He's hoping to be at the meetup with any kind of luck he will be. You know, he's got to come from the West Coast, so we'll see what happens with that. But he sort of dropped out from society for a little while. He's going through some stuff, and nothing bad, just, you know, he needed his time. He's an interesting person when it comes to things because he will be a little bit introverted at times, and then he'll go through extrovert, you know, phases. Maybe that's his Gemini side, I don't know. But he'll sort of flip-flop and need space to himself. And honestly, when he got into this, it was a passion of his for a little while. And then I think after a while, like anything, it became a job, you know. At first, not that he was doing it for money, but at first it was something I was getting enough super chats where we were able to give him a decent cut. And you know, it wasn't like paying his bills or anything, but it was you know, he could buy himself Taco Bell or something a couple times a week because of it. And it went from something that was at least worth doing to every Thursday's kind of the same. And he's got other stuff to do. He's got a boyfriend. He's got all this other stuff he's doing. So he needed time to himself. And it sort of hit like at a weird time for all of us. We were all going through different things, and he needed some space to himself for a little bit. And we didn't even hang out for a little while. Like, he just kind of like needed space for a little while. And I guess, you know, we all go through that. My wife goes through it. I don't go through it as much, I guess, because I'm kind of an extro introvert. Like, I like to go to clubs and bars and just sit there and not talk to anybody. Like, I don't want to be alone necessarily, although I'm fine being alone. I just don't want to be bothered. I like to people watch. I like to watch people. It's just how I am. I like to observe. I like to be around people, and I like to snoop. I like to listen to them. You know, whenever I go someplace, one of my favorite things to do, you know, my wife probably knows this. She probably notices me doing it. I'll sort of tune out and I'll be listening to all the conversations around me. And especially if I got nothing better to do, or like, you know, looking at my phone, basically. I will tend to just like listen to people in public and just sort of like pick up on what they're saying and just, I'm like, no, not even because I'm nosy. I just like the people watch. I just really do. It's just one of my things, you know? So, he'll probably make little pop-ins every now and then. He's popped in the chat a few times since then. He's still, he took off from the Discord server for about a month or so, then he came back. So he's doing well though. You know, we started hanging out a little bit here and there again. Like we didn't have a breakup or anything like that. It was just one of those things where it was just like, you know what? Real life is a priority and online life is not. And he's at that age where he's got, you know, friends and life and work and studies and school and all kinds of stuff. And he needed time, you know? You know, I'd also like to mention one thing that's like bothering me. I just used some dragon's blood oil on that candle as a dressing. And, not just the oils, but the incenses have changed. When I was younger in the 90s, dragon's blood had a very distinct smell that was like my favorite incense. And then over the years, it just kind of became this like toilet bowl cleaner smell. Like it just became not what it used to be. It smells like the perfume in a urinal cake. It's just, ugh. Oh, Psychic Humiar says, DH bro, you look like you lost more weight. What's the secret? Actually, I don't think I did. I think I gained back like 10 or 15 pounds. You know, like you stabilize and then you kind of plateau and stabilize somewhere at your, like what your body wants to be. I was doing keto probably too long. You know, if you look it up, they tell you try not to do it more than 6 months at a time. I did it for like 2 years, going on 2 years. And I reached a plateau of about, well, the lowest I got was 233 or 234. And I was feeling really good. And then I don't know what happened. Like, I guess my body said, buddy, nope. And just started feeding me again. And I started feeding myself too much. I didn't cheat really. I guess I just ate too much. And I got back up to like the 240s about 250 was what I hit not too long ago. The way I see it, if I still fit in 2X pants and 1X shirts or whatever, I'm good. You know, like I'm happy. Or 2X shirts, 1 or 2X shirts. I forget them. If I'm at a pretty normal size, like if I can buy clothes at the store and not have to like go to specialty stores, I feel like I'm happy. Like that, then I'm good. I don't need to be any skinnier than that. I would like to hit like and stay at like 220 something or 230 something. Probably if I wanted to be like athletic looking, I'd be like in the 220s. You know, I mean, I'm obviously I'm kind of built. I'm not a skinny small guy. Even if I lose all my weight, I'm not going to be skinny looking. I'm going to be a big looking guy no matter what. But, yeah, no, I think I gained back 10 or 15 pounds, but I did switch to, what's the word I'm looking for? Intermittent keto. So I'm trying that for a little while. My wife said something, but it wasn't loud enough. What?
The fuck it list.
Yeah. So now we have, what is it?
The keto Cheeto fuck it list.
We have the keto Cheeto fuck it list. And once a week to 10 days, we go to one of the places that we're craving that we haven't been to in 2 years. So since I've been on keto for like that long, there's a whole boatload, I should say bloatload, a whole bloatload of food I haven't touched in 2 years. And what's interesting is every time I have it, I'm not that impressed. I don't feel like I'm missing that much.
That's
like
the whole point of the cheat.
And my wife says it's the whole point of the cheat.
To prove that you don't need it in the first place.
To prove you don't need it anymore. And it's true. Like there's a few things that I crave that I think I'm going to be really happy to have, like fried rice, for example. I had a karaage bowl 2 weeks ago, as you guys saw in my wife's cheat video. And it wasn't really, it was very, very good, but it wasn't something that, like if you told me, okay, you can't have it for another year, okay, no problem. Like it wouldn't even faze me. I don't feel like I need it. I had IHOP yesterday, which isn't like my firstest choices ever, but you know, sometimes a good set of pancakes ain't bad. So I got that, and it didn't feel like, you know, it was okay. One thing that we're refusing to do is to bring that food into our homes, like for regular purposes, like a loaf of bread or something like that. Like we're not going to do that. We're just going to go on cheat days and get either fast food or we'll pick something up at the store and eat it. That's like single serving stuff, you know? And so the idea is like every 7 to 10 days, you go on a cheat day. And I guess by the book, you're supposed to like do the whole day cheating, but I'm probably going to just do one meal. Because honestly, if I'm going to do it that way, it's going to be like 2,000 calories. Because I'm going to go to like, you know, I'm going to go somewhere and have a big old meal that I shouldn't have.
One meal is more than enough.
Yeah, one meal will be more than enough that way. But we're talking like, I think the next one, I've never had Chipotle fried rice. I've had Chipotle before, and I hear like that their fried rice is good. So they're rice and beans. So I'm going to get like an actual Chipotle meal instead of the ones I've been having, which are good, but I want to see what they're like when you get them the way they're designed to be eaten. And then we'll see if it's really that good. So I think we're going to do Dunkin' Donuts and probably definitely Dunkin' Donuts and probably probably Chipotle. That's probably what we're going to do. And then after that, I don't know. Like there's a whole bunch of local restaurants.
Curry.
My wife made a list. She wants curry. She's going to get Thai food. I don't know. But so yeah, no, it's one of those things where like even if I really went at it hard, I'm an endomorph. So it doesn't matter what I do. I'm always going to be a little bit like I can be very healthy and athletic, but even then I'm never going to be cut and ripped and all that kind of stuff. My bones are gigantic. You can ask anybody. It's like when someone says like, oh, they're big boned. No, like sometimes it's true. For me, it's actually true. Like I actually do. And not like, that's not why I'm fat. Like when people say like, oh, I'm big boned to like make an excuse for being fat. No, I literally do. Like I went to the doctor not too long ago, actually a bunch of years ago, really, to getting my wisdom teeth pulled. And the orthopedic surgeon did a whole bunch of x-rays, and he came back. He's like, man, I'd hate to meet the guy who could break your jaw in a dark alley. Basically saying that like my bones are very, very big and strong. I've never broken a bone, and I've tried. I've been hit by cars, like launched up in the air, boom, 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 boom. And I probably break a bone now. I'm older now, but when I was younger, like, I don't know, like my meat would come off, my bones would stay there. So Eddie says he hates Chipotle. Get out of my sight, Eddie. No, I'm kidding. It seems okay. I wouldn't say it's the greatest thing ever, but it is decent. Actually, my favorite kind of that food ever was this little Tex-Mex place, and they had a version of a buffalo chicken quesadilla that was life-changing, absolute life-changing. It was like one of my favorite things ever. Andrew Colts asks, I am where you work with Legion, but have you ever invoked Karanzan? To me, Karanzan is similar to Legion. Yes. So I did a video. I've never actually worked with Karanzan. I did a video comparing the two and saying that they may in fact be related. You could also draw a conclusion that Leviathan may be related as well. They all sort of like revolve around the same principles. They revolve around deep shadow work, deep hidden shadow work. Legion is more about the collective shadow. So when we're talking about Legion, we're not just talking about your shadow so much, although you are. You're talking about the world shadow, which is why when we did the Shadowgate project in 2020, people are sort of like, what the hell did you do? And I'm like, well, we didn't actually cause any of this. We're just causing you to see it. That's really all it is. The world shadow is being exposed. It's still working. People are figuring out what's going on all the time now. It's become mainstream for people. And by mainstream, I don't mean what's on the mainstream media. I mean, it's mainstream. It's like what everybody's actually talking about. Fuck the news. They don't matter. People are starting to realize what's going on, and the powers that be are losing control of the narrative, and the shadow is being exposed. It's just that simple. The collective shadow, and a lot of people are turning away from it, but even more people, more importantly, are turning towards it and trying to integrate it. That's amazing to see that it's even being attempted is amazing, and it fills me with a lot of hope, even though there's a lot to not be hopeful about. Fills me with a lot of, when you have like people like Russell Brand killing it with some of these things. Alex Jones, of course, started the ball rolling years ago, but I kind of don't trust him somehow. I don't know what it is. Maybe he just acts crazy so he doesn't get in trouble. That could be it. Something about him always kind of spooks me, though. Even when I do like him, it still kind of spooks me. But even he's admitting that we're starting to win a little bit. So go figure. So Preston asks, explain getting hit by cars. I had a friend hit me with a car. And we were in a parking lot at a Burger King, and I wasn't looking, and he was being a douchebag, and he floored it. He's probably doing like 40 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour. Decent clip, not like full speed, but enough. And he hit me, and I rolled up over the back of the car, and I landed, somehow I landed on my feet, interestingly enough. I was like 22 maybe, or 20. It was 20. Rolled up over the hood, over the top of the car, like knocked the side mirror, like just about. I thought I broke it, but I guess I didn't. I must have just hit it good and I knocked it out of whack. Rolled down, and this was back then when they weren't the little plastic things, they were actually like a thing that would stick out. Anyway, so I bonked that, it got all disheveled, and I landed on the ground, and it was an old Volvo of all things. Volvos don't break down like those. Well, they do break down, but they don't. You could hit those things with a hammer back in the day and they would have broke the hammer. I rolled up over the hood, rolled up over the car, still had my drink in my hand, and I remember chucking it at the kid. And it was a good 30, 35, I don't know. He said he was being a dick. He was trying to scare us, and he didn't have a license. He was 14, and he was hanging out with a bunch of 20-year-olds, you know, like, or early, like late. I guess I might have been 19. Let me correct the record one more time. I think I was 19, and he was like 14, and he was my almost brother actually at the time, because certain relationships going on. Anyway, he's driving my friend's car because he's a jerk. He gets behind the wheel, floors it at us with the intention of like slamming on the brakes, but he fucked up and didn't hit the brakes. And he like hit me, and like then he hit the brakes, and it was like really, really, he thought he killed me. Of course he was laughing, even though he thought he killed me. He's a bit of a psychopath. And I ended up being fine. I don't even remember if I bruised. I remember being pissed, but I wasn't actually hurt. I don't know. I got lucky in that one. But I've got stories of things like, I remember I was delivering a tree a couple of years ago at my job, and I was sort of running with it because of how the landscape was. I needed to get a running start, and it's a big tree. It was probably about like a 1,200-pound tree ball, which you need a big cart for that. And I was pulling and the other guy was pushing, and the wheel clipped a brick wall, and it clipped the brick wall in just such a way that the whole tree and me got spun around, and I literally head-butted a brick wall, and the tree landed on me. And I was actually fine. You know what hurt the most was my knee. Like, I landed just right. Luckily, I didn't hurt my knee, but I landed more on my knee than on my... Felt like I landed more, but no, I had a gash. My glasses were scratched and fucked up, and it was good for a couple days. And I mean, I hit it hard. Like, I think it moved a brick. I don't know. There was a good thwap sound when I hit it. And I remember sitting there on the ground. I knew I was okay, but I looked up. I'm like, you guys mind if I just sit here for a minute? Just let me just collect my thoughts, because that was a good hit. Whatever, man. I can take a hit, I guess. I don't know. I'm sure sooner or later I'll find a brick wall that'll take me out, but I haven't found it yet. I'm sure it's out there. I don't want to test it. I don't want to find out. The way I see it is things that would hurt me. So here's the thing. As a big guy, if you're a big person, you might know what I'm talking about. I don't just mean fat. If you're big and thick and strong, when you're big, thick, and strong, when you get hurt, you get fucking hurt. Because to hurt you takes more than it takes like a little wafy person. So when I get hurt, if I ever break a bone, it's probably going to be like, and just like flap it around like a flipper. It's probably going to be terrible. Because it's just like things that would normally like hurt somebody just kind of hurt me. That doesn't mean I don't feel a pain. Like if I stub my toe, you'll hear it like 3 houses down. But if I any other normal thing, it just physically hurts. I do feel, I do feel, but I don't get damaged that bad generally. I just don't. I'm lucky like that, I guess. I'm thick, like Eddie said. I'm thick with 2 C's. I've never had a concussion. You're right, Atropa. I'm lucky I didn't get one. I've never had a concussion ever. Again, not for lack of trying. Martial arts class, getting thrown on my ass, wearing pads and boxing with each other. Not like full on boxing, but like, kickboxing style stuff, medium to moderate contacts. Never got a concussion. I guess I'm lucky. Although I will say I do get phased by a good head hit. Like I don't know how. I don't think I have a glass jaw, but I do notice a good hit. The good hit will definitely make my eyes cross. So I don't know. Maybe I have got concussions. Maybe that's why, like, I forgot words sometimes. Faustian makes a good question. While we're at it, Is it time for writing our own Goetia with entities representing the same energies, but with more modern to us familiar masks? One of my early ambitions was to go through the Goetia one by one and do a Pokemon and collect them all. That's why I sort of make fun of that mentality. Because my intention was to sort of work with each one by one and record my experiences and then create something new around them. That didn't really pan out. You know, I sort of like a combination of burnout and getting what I needed from it. It's kind of like at some point it became an exercise in almost schizophrenia. You know, you'll notice that quite a few of them are similar. And not for nothing, every time I started working with one, I was drawn towards trying to untangle who they should be. And what I mean by that is, who were they in antiquity before they were demonized? If they were anybody. I can't speak for all of them, but I will say the vast majority of them are demonized pagan and folklore spirits from all different cultures, whatever the medieval people had access to. And of course, depending upon who you listen to, the origins of the Goetia differ. The most documented one, that would be Johann Weier's Pseudomonarchia Demonium, the false hierarchy of demons. And that was actually not an occult work. That was an early psychiatric work. He was categorizing these things with the intent of dispelling them. He believed that they were not actual beings, but were sort of like an early version of psychosis. And he wanted to prove that they were not real, so he cataloged them all. That's why it's the false kingdom or false hierarchy of demons, and tried to sort of categorize them all and sort of, I wouldn't say debunk, but I guess wanted to put, now I don't have a translation of that work, but that's what a lot of people would tell you if you look him up and what that was. So it was meant to be a very, very early, remember we're talking like what, 1500s, 1600s, I forget the year, very early period attempt at early psychiatry, okay, without obviously literal psychiatry because they didn't really have it developed yet. But they were sort of classified as a mental illness, I guess. That list of entities was then used in the Solomonic traditions. And of course, the Solomonic traditions are, there's this big thing. People have to realize, like, people make fun of the Necronomicon. They'll be like, oh, the Necronomicon is BS, it was made up. And it's like, if you do your history, you'll see that so is pretty much all of this stuff. On some level, all of this stuff is meant, nothing goes back to like some ancient tradition literally. There isn't like a lineage, at least not that we have access to. There may be one, there may be, like you have what is it, the Ducante lineage or whatever, whether you believe in that or not. I'm sort of ambivalent on it. I don't really know. I'm sort of like, it could be, maybe. It sounds to me like a little bit of embellishment to make the book better, but I could be wrong, and I don't mean to, disrespect S. Connolly by any stretch. But I do have my doubts, but I also am willing, I'm open to it. Like, I don't criticize it. It's like, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Maybe those lineages are real, and if so, I apologize if I'm disrespecting you. I don't mean to. I just need more than just a book that says it. And I'm sure you understand. If that lineage is real, I'm sure they understand, because they probably want to keep it secret if it is real. Beyond what they gave to the public in those books. But clearly people were working with these entities using grimoires, even back in, that era. But the common misunderstanding by beginners is that, something like the Lesser Key of Solomon or Red Dragon or Grimoire and Verum, whatever it is, that these are sort of representative of some lost or legitimate traditional practice that goes back to literally Solomon or something like that. Nothing could be further from the truth. This is clear by the inclusion of certain things that would have only appeared like 1,000 years after Solomon, certain mistakes that could only have been put in. You can't even call them blinds because they're clearly things that they would have not known and they just sort of fudged. So, and that's just my shaky research on it. There's people who probably know 10 times what I do. But the thing is, you have to remember a lot of these were at best channeled, at worst made up to be something to sell as charlatanry. Take your pick, okay? The fact that they are working systems with very intricate Solomonic and to some degree Kabbalistic references and things like that should tell you that there's some legitimacy to them. Just like Necronomicon is, if you understand what it's doing, a rather well put together. One could say it's a parody, but it's not. It's meant to be like a reskin of astrological, celestial, integration ritual, high magic. You're working with each planetary sphere one by one with your higher guardian angel, your watcher. Okay, it's pretty clear that this was, probably even inspired by Golden Dawn, Thelema stuff. Probably all that was involved too. So look, this is why I say occultism is a little bit like the Da Vinci Code for Goths, because there's so much here that's one of the reasons why it's so interesting to me, even if I wasn't engaged in any of it. It's an interesting study of history because you have to look into what do these secrets mean. And this also means you butt heads with the secret societies that are involved in global politics and things. You do end up encountering that stuff, and it's very interesting to see where these mentalities come from and where they led and what was corrupted. One thing all right, so Styx Hexenhammer, one of my favorite YouTubers, he did this video not long ago talking about, I forget the exact title or what it was exactly about, but he made a point to say that whatever these people are today, they are a corruption of whatever mystery schools existed then. I completely concur. I think that, America, for example, so I did a video about the Enlightenment just the other day. It was like a little 60-second short about the Enlightenment. And that they try to put the toothpaste back in the tube. So a few hundred years ago, people became sort of, give it whatever, source that you want, whatever the inspiration was, became interested in freedom and liberty and rationalism and all of those things. We call it the Enlightenment era for a good reason. And they became obsessed with all of these things in the best way possible, revolutionized the world, set the populations free, or at the very least made us, free range enough that we were able to prosper in a way we couldn't have under the feudal system anymore. And they're trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube. They want, now that we have created the technology and gotten ourselves as a species to this point, obviously with some risks and dangers, they definitely over exaggerate global warming and all this other stuff. And, the wrong reaction is to be anti-environmental. I'm still very much, if it was up to me, we would be all living in Avatar land. Like we would all be living in harmony with nature, and our technology would be more geared towards being harmonious with nature, not just comforting and food and toys and crap. It would be way more harmonious with nature if at all possible. And we would be reaching for the stars. That would be me. But unfortunately, that's not what they want. They want industrialization. They want to do things in a way that doesn't work in accordance with nature, but tries to corrupt and control it. And maybe that's exactly what the Enlightenment era started as, but the Enlightenment era, I believe, was inspired by certain occult, mystery school, individual organizations and people. Maybe they were renegades from those systems. Maybe they were those systems and it was like their last gasp. But we all know very clearly that the founding fathers, quite a few of them, were involved in occultism, secret societies, etc. Many of them were not Christian, but were deists. That's the thing when people say, like, oh, America's a Christian nation, it was founded by Christians. Not quite, not so fast there, buddy. I wouldn't say they were not Christians, but I would say that they were deists, and there is a slight but meaningful difference. Okay, they were, you have to look up what deism is, because I don't have it in my brain, the exact definition of it, but deism is not, it's sympathetic to Christianity for sure. It's apologetic towards Christianity, but it is not Christianity, right? It is this idea that there is a creator, there is a God, there is a divine being that is behind everything. And it's quite compatible with even my not atheistic, but certainly not theistic perspective. They definitely had the divine in mind. And it could be possible, you know, look, don't forget, we're talking about they had members that were Freemasons, Rosicrucian stuff. You had Benjamin Franklin was a pretty well-known occultist. And yes, and Eddie brought up the Hellfire Club. You have the literal Illuminati. Now, whether it's like good guy Illuminati or bad guy, depends on which thing. I don't know I'm not a master of that history, but it is there. Okay. And there was supposedly good guy Illuminati. Look at the damn Statue of Liberty. That is an image of Lucifer, my friend. That's what it was designed to be. But they changed it into, it still looks like a man. Go look at the Statue of Liberty with if you weren't told that was a female, if you just looked at the face and at the general proportions, you go, is that a guy or a girl? Like, it could be a guy. There's definitely a little bit of androgyny going on there. It's a very phosphorus, Horus, Promethean figure. Okay. It's got the torch. It's supposed to be Lucifer. That is not, Statue of Liberty is Ishtar. Good point. Yes. But Ishtar is, follow your lineage, guys. Remember, Lucifer wasn't really, nobody ever worshiped Lucifer. Lucifer is not certainly not as the Christians think of it. Never existed in history. There is, someone posted, I think it was a Luminostic, posted that Jesus and Lucifer are both some kind of a bullshit pile. Whether it's they never existed at all or they were conflated. I agree with Luminostic. It was probably a group of people that were conflated together in one myth, perverted to be used by the Romans, eventually as the church, to convert and control people. Plain and simple. Look at history. That's exactly what they did. Whether that's what they meant to do or not, that is what they did. They used it to control people. They didn't use it to set people free or to help them or moralize. They used it to control people. They created a state religion, and they used that to crush people. I don't have a problem with the Christian. I'm not saying there's nothing that I disagree with it over, but I have no problem with Christianity, the faith or the spirituality. My problem is with Christian religion and fundamentalists and things like that. Just like anything, people who take things to extremes, they bother me. So Lucifer is, now in my view, the way I understand it, and it's sort of like a modern understanding that's sort of emerged as people have had to recognize that theism's kind of not really rational. Okay. Not strict theism anyway, not fundamentalist theism is not. We had to sort of recognize how we could have these seemingly real beings without the literal mythology behind them. The realization is the Gnostics, the Neoplatonists, and the Buddhists, and the Advaitins or whatever, the Hindus, all sort of have it right. It's this idea that there is a singular divine totality. Within that singular divine totality are archetypal sort of eddies, or not Eddie like our friend Eddie, but patterns in chaos, which repeat. They're like fractal patterns. These are called aeons. They are called all kinds of things. The Hindus believe that every god is a mask for Brahman. Brahman being the ultimate, the ineffable, the absolute divine being that is so beyond what you can imagine. You can't even really, to call it God is kind of an insult because God is a personification of what it is. So that's not, so you have Brahma, that is the god that represents Brahman, just like you have chaos, which is both a primordial element and a primordial being in Greek. Greek and Indian stuff, they go together like this. If you really look at it, they really go together well. I don't know. Some people were sharing info. Okay. There's definitely some cultural diffusion going on for a long time, and a lot of cross inspiration going on, especially with the Greeks went everywhere, and so did the Indians anyway, and the Egyptians. So there's this ultimate divine thing, and within that are archetypal shapes, archetypal enigmas, aeons, whatever you want to call them. And those things are what inspire us to even see in each other the spiritual natures that we have. If you look, each of us is an archetype. We generally, so like if you use Jungian archetypes just as an example, and he even pointed out that there's way more than the ones he mentioned. He just talked about the 12 main ones that he had identified. Everybody is a blend of one or more or three or four of those archetypes, but usually one in particular. And that can change over your lifetime. But we usually come to represent one of those archetypes. Well, archetype, if you know Jung, he studied Gnosticism quite a bit. He studied Neoplatonism quite a bit. He studied a lot of these things. He studied Hinduism. He studied all this stuff quite a bit. And he understood. He even used the word pleroma to describe a lot of this stuff. The collective conscious was like the pleroma. He understood a lot of this stuff. And so he took the idea of an aeon, which is like a monad. Like, so you have the main monad, which is the divine spark, the source. Then you have all the radiating monads, the smaller monads. They're all singularities that are less and less pure as they radiate out, right? The Sephira from the Kabbalah, right? That's an example of monads, all right? For those who don't know, by the way, like Kabbalah, whether you were talking about the Jewish version or not, developed because of Platonism and Neoplatonism's influence on that. The emanationism, okay, is what we're talking about. So these eminent entities, yes, the Jews called Ein Sof, correct. Absolutely correct. So Ein Sof, Brahman, chaos, all of these things are talking about the same thing. They're just a little different, but they're talking about the same thing. Fundamentally the same principle. And as these things are identified, depending upon how theistic the culture is, those aeons or monads or Sephira or whatever, either they are literal conscious sentient beings, if they're a dualist in particular. If they're more monist or non-dualist in nature, they recognize them as inspirations, which then become masks for the divine itself, for the monad, for the Ein Sof. So a way to think of it is, each Sephira is an emanation of Ein Sof, which means each one of those is Ein Sof in a way, and there's a mask in front of it. It's like your arms are you, right? So let's pretend, for example, that the brain is you, which is not really fair, but let's pretend your brain is you. So that would be like the Ein Sof of your body, and everything else radiates down. You get like the tips of your fingers and your feet and your legs and your arms and all that good shit. And all of these things could be seen as like the Sephira. It's not, I'm not saying they are. I don't understand Kabbalah very well. It is not my forte. It's not even my 5-tay. It's not even a tay at all for me. It's a thing like, I Googled it once, and I stayed at a Holiday Inn last night, and I'm a Kabbalist now. Yeah, no, that's not what I'm doing. So I'm just kind of talking out of my ass here a little bit, but those Sephira would be emanations of this body coming out, radiating out from you. They are part of you. So all the different Sephira that we're talking about are Ein Sof in a different form. And then you have a mask, so that would be the angel, or if you're working with a Qliphoth, you'd have the demon, right? That represents it. My way of doing things is no different. The thing that I stumbled upon by accident in the last year in particular is I'm trying to sort of create a new system for myself that I like, that is... Part of my problem is I don't like the baggage that comes with religions and current occult, lore. Don't like the Golden Dawn, don't like Thelema, don't like Kabbalism. I don't like any of those things. There's too much, built-in baggage. One of the things I like about sort of like this new agey kind of smell that we have on everything, even though that started with Madame Blavatsky and there's a lot of baggage there is this idea that we've got a whole world of spirituality now at our fingertips. We've got all this mythology. We've got all of these traditions. Why are we still fucking around by being specific ones, right? I mean, I can't claim any different. I'm being a critic without trying to be a hypocrite. I am being critical, but I recognize I'm doing it too. But why are we all beating around the bush? Why are we, why don't we distill what's useful from all of them? I've always been a big fan of people like Joseph Campbell, comparative religion, comparative mythology. That's always been like my favorite thing, because I believe, I don't just feel, I truly believe, and I don't do belief very often because belief to me is sort of a bad thing. I sincerely believe from my work with all of this stuff that at the core of all of these things is the same truth. Everybody's experiencing the same true divinity, but we're all different perspectives of it, so we're describing it differently. And if you really compare the religions and the mythologies and the mysticisms from around the world, you find an interesting pattern. It all seems to radiate out of India, for one thing. Everything seems to have... India goes back the furthest in history, with the exception of Sumeria. They're kind of like... I guess India goes back further because that's Proto-Indo-European. You go back to India, you get the origin of pretty much every religion on some level. Now, you can go back to Africa too, but that lineage doesn't exist. But really, you have to talk about the Fertile Crescent, right? You got to talk about the Fertile Crescent. Everything starts sort of there and spreads out all over the place. At least that's the current dogma of history. If we want, we can potentially say Atlantis in Africa, maybe. But let's say current historical, validated historical stuff takes us back to the Fertile Crescent. And then you get Proto-Indo-European stuff. Okay, all of it goes to the Indus Valley. And so really, it's interesting because when we look at that, every single religion in the world that we consider a modernized, like last 2,000 years religion, comes in some form, gets a big 2 scoops of inspiration from what the Indians were doing 6,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, etc. Now, yes, go back far enough in India, it wasn't very well systemized. It was very much a bunch of different things that eventually became a very, like what we see today is not what was going on back then either. You had a whole bunch of different, gurus and masters and traditions all sort of agreeing. They had the Vedas. So when you had the Vedas and you had like the texts that form, what the rishis gave them and everything, when you have all of that put together, it eventually became like, there is no such thing as Hinduism. Like that's a Western term that'd be like Americanism. Like imagine saying that every religion that America fucks around with is Americanism. Like that's some bullshit. Like it's kind of like a fucked up colonizer thing that we do. And I'm not usually into woke terms, but it counts in this case. Calling it Hinduism there is no Hindu religion. There is a bunch of different religions that what we would call Hindus, which really means people on the other side of the Indus Valley, Indus River. That's what that means. All of those people practice different things that are sort of related in a similar radiant way. A lot of them have their origins in the Vedas and stuff like that, right? Well, it's no different. You go to Greece and you see there had to be a lot of exchange between Greece and India, either before Greece came along or after. There had to be. Even the word chakra that we talk about I say this a lot, even the term chakra that we talk about in yoga, that's a Greek loan word, guys. It's kakra, which is wheel. It's literally the same thing. They took a Greek word for it. And if you look, Plato even had his own version of chakras. It wasn't a new idea to him either. And he got it from, I guess, his teacher Socrates. So, guys, at some point, we've got to rip the scab off. We've got to rip the Band-Aid off. And we've got to distill out the most important things. And some people might say, well, why not just go to India and take what they're doing and put a new skin on that? And that's literally what people have done. Western occultism, in a lot of ways, if not exactly ways, is yoga and tantra with a skin on it. If you look, it's almost all the same. Do you know what it's missing? Like things like pranayama don't happen in Western culture. We don't do pranayama. We don't do qigong. We don't do qigong, pranayama, all kind of like the same idea, just a little different. we don't really have a Western version of that, or at least if we do, it's not mainstream. I'm sure they had something, but you're talking about mudras and mantras and breath work. The closest we got is like the Lord's Prayer type of shit, because, you know, well, look what happened to our Western civilization. But interestingly, if you go back, I actually got this book here. Let me see if I can find it. Highly recommend this book. Highly, highly, highly recommend this bad boy. I don't have enough time to read it. I can only flip through it and sniff a chapter or two. I rub my eyeballs on a chapter or two here and there, and not actually read it. I just kind of, let me guess, I put it in a different room, right? Of course I did. Bet you I put it in a different room. Yeah, I put it in the other room. Anyway, you know what? I'm gonna go see if I can grab it. I'll grab it. It's in the. It's about runes and stuff. That's what happens when I clean. See, look what happens when I clean. I can't find shit. I don't know what I did with it. I cleaned it up. That's what I did. You guys ever clean up and then you can't find something? This is why I'm a surrounder. Damn it, Tropa, you got me pegged, man. You really do. I am definitely a surrounder. And for good reason. If I didn't, I'd lose everything. I'll be damned. I don't know what to do with it. It's a very good book recommendation. I really want to recommend it, but I can't remember the title of it for the fucking life of me. I'd like to show you what I'm talking about. All right, do you guys mind? I'll be back one more time. Let me go check again. I must have put it back here. What the hell did I do? You know, because I don't know. I think I still. Did you put the light on that here for me? Yeah, this is it. I don't know what I did with it. I clean. It's the worst thing you can ever do. Don't clean your house. The worst fucking thing. I don't want to roll and I can't even do it. What the hell did I do with it? Don't know. It'll probably turn up when the stream is over. I'll probably be like, oh, there it is. I think I was gonna snoop it again. I'm gonna look in here again because, like, how many of you guys do that? Like, when you lose something, you look in the same place over and over and over again because it's like, it's gotta be there. I'm just stupid. It's not here. It is not in that drawer. Why do I keep looking there? It's not there. I know where it is. I know where it is. That's why I can't find it, because it's a place I put it on. Ta-da! I never would have guessed here either. That's because I meant to bring these in the back, and I never did. Of course, it's the one at the bottom. All right, guys, I apologize. I found it. You can stop laughing now. You can stop laughing. Tell your friends to come back. I'm back. This is the one that I want to recommend. This one right here. This book is absolutely, if you're into anything to do with runes, anything to do with Norse tradition, magic, folklore. I haven't read the whole thing. I don't know. I've probably read like a quarter of it. I've thumbed through the whole thing though. Like, I've definitely, like, you know, coffee tabled it. Let's see. I want to give you this example that I found in here. Just the other day when I was looking in here, where was it? The reason it's important is because it's clear the Norse, tradition goes back to when, the Proto-Indo-European stuff. There was definitely a clash of cultures, and they received a lot, believe it or not, in my opinion. They got a lot of it. They didn't get like the metaphysics like the Greeks did, but they got, there's some kind of, you can tell, like, it's just sort of, it's interesting to me, like the connection that must be there. Like, obviously their folklore is nothing like each other's, but there's like a vibe. I don't know how to put it. Where the hell are you? What am I looking for? Almost there, almost there. I mean, you do have these interesting things where, like, they would do body postures, and it was basically like, it's almost like when we do like the YMCA thing. So you got stuff like that. That's almost like yogic stuff, right? Almost. It's not the same, but it's a similar idea. Using their body and aligning your body a certain way to match certain symbols. Where are you? There's one where it shows them using their hands for it specifically, and it made me immediately think of mudras, right? So they had rune gestures is what this book is calling it. They had rune gestures. So here's some examples right here. And tell me these don't look a little bit like mudras and things. Tell me there's not some similarity going on there, right? I don't know if it's not exact at all, but there's definitely, I mean, it's your hands. You're gonna use your hands for things, right? It's a good one right here. More examples. Okay. So hopefully that's showing up on the camera. Hope I'm putting it in the right spot. So this is all very interesting. And some of these, to me, are almost recognizable as mudras. That's what's interesting about it. So very, very good book. Very, 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 probably the best one. Like, so much of like the stuff on Viking stuff, we call it Viking stuff. It should be called Norse stuff. Vikings was like a job that people had. They were like pirates. That was like, imagine having your whole country, your whole culture called pirate. or something of that degree. Imagine 1,000 years from now, people looking at American culture and calling it gangs, like calling it Crips or calling it Bloods or something like that. So if you're interested in that, this is I forget who it was that recommended to me. He's a YouTuber. I don't know him personally or anything like that. Ari Thayer, that's his name. I loved his channel for a little while. Some about his channel kind of bored me after a while. He's really good. There's another guy I watch now who I can't remember his name because I'm terrible at that. He's kind of like a burly guy, got a beard. I can't think of his name, but he does really good work. Anyway, this is no nonsense. A lot of this stuff, it's not like Viking lore, where it's like all stylized and you got, it looks like the show Vikings, like medieval biker club and all this shit. That one's good because it's very much about, the tribal European lore. And it's very good. Very good. So I highly recommend it. And it's you learn a lot just from looking at a book like that. Can't recommend it enough. And there's working stuff in there you can actually utilize. It's not just for education. It's well, all for education, but it's actually very, very good stuff. Anyway, I forgot the exact point. I think the point was that the mudras and stuff. There's definitely some relationship going on. So my sort of project lately, the last couple of years, starting with Become the Maelstrom, was to try to distill something that was not tradition specific too much. I'll post it for you again, Zach. Hold on. Or Zebediah. Zachariah. Yeah, I can't see that far. Jan Fry's Hellrunar. I can't pronounce it right, but you're supposed to roll some R's in there. A Manual of Rune Magic. So here you go. Hopefully you guys can see it. I can't see too good because I don't have my stuff. Okay, yeah, there we go. Hopefully you guys can see that. It's a little dark. There we go. Hellrunar. I got it on Amazon. I think it was like $30, $20, something like that. Top 10 book. No, it's not a book that's going to tell you how to worship Odin and all that. It's literally all about the runes and the culture that went with it, and it's very good. If I was more into Norse stuff, I'd know more books, but if I don't know, I'd point anybody towards that book if you're interested. I think it's maybe Jackson Crawford's the guy I'm thinking of, Wyatt. Let me look him up. Maybe there's another YouTuber that I do occasionally watch, and I like him because he's a little bit, so Arith Hager I'm saying it wrong, but Arith Hager, I'm not Norse enough to be able to pronounce it. Is very good, but he can be a little bit, I don't know. I don't want to say dry, but something about it. Like, I'm not complaining, because, like, I mean, Esoterica is one of my favorite channels, and he's dry as shit. Jackson Crawford. No, that's not him. I never subscribed to him. I know you're talking about, though. Yeah, no, not him. I haven't seen him pop up in a little while. If I find him, I'll let you know. Oh, here we go. Norse Magic and Beliefs, 102,000 subscribers. I'll put the link in. This is my other favorite guy, and he's very informative, and he's, I don't know, a little bit more entertaining, I guess, than average. So there you go. Check that guy out. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I have nothing but love for Arth Hager, but I can't. Sometimes I used to listen to him and I would just get like cross-eyed, kind of like when it's just like, oh my goodness, okay, wow. So that's not a bad thing. It's just, you know, am I into it? Yeah, absolutely. All right. So back on track. So sort of what I've been trying to do is, you can ask Eddie. I message him with my frustrations all the time because I will think I've invented or figured something out that like came to me in a flash. A lot of the time it'll be inspired because I'm just, you know, I'll be thinking about things that I know, or that I've heard or whatever, my very superficial knowledge of things that I have. And I'll remember that and be like, you know, I need a good way to describe this. Right. So I'll be thinking to myself, okay, well, there is a divine, and that divine is absolute, and it's everything, and it's you, really. That's really what you are, right? But why do we see this world the way we see it? Well, it must be inspired from something. Well, what's inspiring it? Like, it's not random. This may be a mirage, but it's not random, and there is consequence, which means it's more like shadow puppets. Like, everything we're seeing is like a shadow puppet. This Coke can is. It's not really a Coke can, it's a shadow puppet that I call a Coke can, and whatever it really is invisible. I can't see what it really is because I'm looking at this superficial mirage on top of it. So whatever it really is, and I know that's divine, but why do I see it the same way every time I look at it? If it's just a dream, why can't I just like make it do what I want? Why can't I see it some other way? Why, you know, so I have to think to myself, like, if this is all a mirage, if this is all Maya, why does it all look reasonable? Well, then I remember things like the word logos from Greek, this idea that there's logic inherent in reality. And I think, well, okay, that's fine. That sounds a little too much like math, though, because to me, math is a language. Math is not the true nature of the universe, but the universe we apprehend with our senses and with our minds certainly is. So what I'm trying to get at is there is a mirage. The mirage is mathematical for sure. And there must be a logic underneath it. If that's the definition of math, just being pure logic, then yes, I would agree that there is something logical to the divine. There is an element of logic, whether it's inherent throughout the divine or just the parts we see are a different matter. You know, the idea is that in chaos is everything, including order and disorder. So yeah, you know, that's a reasonable assumption, right? That there could be logic and illogic there. But the idea is that there must be something inspiring this mirage. And that thing that's inspiring this mirage, being the divine, there must be a certain rationality to it. or a certain pattern, shall we say, rather than rationality. Maybe that's the wrong word. Rationality makes it sound like, oh, it makes sense or it's sane. I'm really looking for like repeatability. There's a certain repeatability to it. There's a certain inspiring force in it. Why do we see what we see? Well, it must be inspired by something invisible that is inspiring all of this. I hate to sound circular, but at some point you kind of have to. So what would that be? Well, it's kind of like eddies in a river. It's kind of like, you know, well, I happen on the word enigma. And as I'm thinking about the word enigma, I'm like, what other things remind me of enigmas? Well, you've heard of aeons from Gnosticism, and that's the origin of our word eon, by the way, is the word aeon, which is interesting because modern science would call it an eon, because in evolutionary cosmology versus emanationism, it's the same idea, except instead of things emanating out of a source through a divine dimension we can't see, it emanates through time from a big bang. Anyway, I don't want to get too far into that. Do you have eons, aeons, enigmas? So as I'm doing this stuff, as I'm looking these things up, or as I'm thinking about it and writing them down and piecing it together, then I look something up to check the, like, wouldn't it be some shit if that term originated from some, and lo and behold, exactly what I suspected is true. And I'm like, fuck, this rabbit hole is deep as fuck. And this is why I make fun of myself. People don't realize, people are like, oh, Thorne, you're so educated, you're this, you're that. No, I'm not. I'm actually a complete doofus at this stuff. If you really knew how much I know, you'd know, like, and I don't have, what's they call that, like where you, imposter syndrome. I don't even have that. Like, I'm open as shit about the fact that I don't know what I don't know. You know, I'm proud of the fact that I fly by the seat of my pants and make it up as I go along, and it happens to like fit perfectly every time I do it. But it is also frustrating because I'm constantly reinventing the wheel. And one of the reasons that I do that, though, in my defense, for those of you who would be critical of me, is that I don't like all the baggage associated with all of this other stuff. I have always refrained from calling myself a specific school of thought. And if I do, it is in a way that it's like, well, this is such an open-ended thing, it's okay. You know, if you look at me from outside and say he's a libertarian, you're completely right. Textbook, bottom right corner of the political compass test, always somewhere in there, usually pretty far to the bottom and to the right. I'm usually touching the bottom and like 2 or 3 away from the right most point. When it comes to philosophy, I'm all over the map. Buddhism, you know, Taoism, non-dualism, Luciferianism, Satanism, all that stuff kind of rings true to me, and I adopt a lot of those things, but I didn't need to adopt a lot of it because I was already kind of there. So, you know, I'm not an inherent to anything. I don't belong to any school of thought because I don't try to, right? Sort of a self-realized person. I'm my own Renaissance man, if you will. I don't want to be a good Christian. I don't want to be a good Satanist. I don't want to be a good insert thing here. I want to be me, and I want to be me in a way that's honest and sincere and direct and goes where I want to go. And I want to do more than scratch the surface of the truth. I want to get to the core of it. And what's interesting is I feel like, and I really do think that I have seen very deeply into reality. And that has given me a very unique perspective on what everybody else is doing. So when I look at other people's occult practices, without knowing anything, I can see over and over and over again the same basic premise. All is divine. All is the universe is divine. God is the universe. We're all God. We're all one. We're all union. Everything is, and I see this over and over and over again to the point where it's like, you know, if I don't see it, I can more easily count when I don't see it than when I do, because I see it in everything just about. So it's easier to count the ones that don't say that, which is interesting by itself. And very often the ones that don't say that, they have one thing in common. They are a slave religion. When I say a slave religion, I mean it's a religion that is designed to keep people enslaved. By and large, those religions that do not tell you that you're divine in some way, are a slave religion. This actually goes for a lot of what we would call Hindu religions. A lot of them will say, hey, you're God, but you got to work to be God. Like, you're God, but you got to work now. Accept your slavery as a lower caste because that's what God would do, right? They're still a slave religion, even though they still tell you up front the truth. I find that really funny, to be honest. So I'm trying to, using my own cultural metaphors and flavors, obviously, there's going to be, whatever I end up putting together, it's going to be a mixture of non-dualism, a mixture of Luciferianism, a mixture of this, a mixture of that. It's all going to be like put in here. But it began with Become the Maelstrom. I tried to distill out a practice for people that wanted to have something that wasn't, totally secular, but wasn't atheist or anything like that. It was something that had a classical bent to it, but was its own animal and allowed you a perspective that sort of drew from more than one source and put it together in this thing, and wasn't Da Vinci Code for Goths. Because if you want Da Vinci Code for Goths, that's when you want Esoterica, Foolish Fish, Damien Eccles, a lot of other people. Okay, that's not what I'm doing here. I know it seems like it because as someone who researches these things, you can't help it because it is built into it. But I'm trying to distill out and give you what I experience. And yes, Scotty, that's a great quote. Carl Sagan, I know he gets some negative press, and deservedly so. He could be a bit of a pain in the ass, and he probably wanted globalism if he was fast forwarded to today. But he definitely sounded like a product of the 60s, because he was definitely quoting, whether he meant to or not, rather Vedic and similar kinds of ideas. His one of his most famous statements we are a way for the universe to know itself. And that statement is like the epitome. That is, if I didn't know that he was like a hardcore anti-religious. Now, he never really told you what his beliefs were, spiritual speak. He never ever came out and said, I'm this, I'm that, I do this, I do that. He seemed to be completely disinterested in all of that, at least in a public sense. But if I didn't know better, I would say, is that in the Upanishads or something? Is that something, did that come from Shankara? Shankara said that, right? We're a way for the universe to know itself. If I didn't know better, I would think that that's where it came from. Because that is a perfect statement for any pantheist, non-dualist, even animists would potentially agree with that. Damn, is that a good statement? We are a way for the universe or cosmos to know itself. Damn. That is perfect. That one statement could kind of sum up my entire spiritual philosophy. Pretty much in one sentence. That's it. And it's like he got it. And he probably didn't get there through religion and spirituality. He got there by looking at stars. Which is interesting because that's where most religions come from, is an observation of astrological significances. Because, of course, it had a lot to do with harvest time, and that's why you get so many harvest gods, yes. Something about stargazing makes people's brains pop. Maybe they had to do some shrooms too, I don't know. But something about stargazing, with or without shroom help, people suddenly figure shit out. I don't know what it is. My voice is starting to go, so how are we doing here? Unfortunately, the fragrance I use, that Dragon's Blood shit, it's lingering now. It's an oily one. That was probably a bad choice. So let's get, I missed a lot of chat here while I was looking for those books and things. Whew, my throat's all done. Eddie makes an interesting statement that I can't disagree with. He says, controversial opinion. I'm just as vehemently anti-pagan as I am anti-Christian. I am anti any confining belief system. As I've said to people, with respect to Christianity, do I believe there is a divine being? I hesitate to ever call myself a theist. Just as I would hesitate to call myself an atheist. I think those terms are too binary. And I'm not an agnostic nor a non-theist. I definitely have an idea of what I'm talking about. I don't know. I'm not in the I don't know category. But theism has a very specific position, and atheism has a very specific position. They're both dogmatic. What I know is that there is a universe. It exists in my consciousness, not the other way around. Every single person that's listening to me cannot deny the statement, the universe as you know it exists in consciousness, not the other way around. There is no other way to know of the universe except through consciousness. When consciousness is absent, the universe is absent. Does that mean the universe is a product of consciousness? That's not what we're saying. Nor are we saying that the universe is primary. See, the materialists will say the universe comes first, consciousness is an emergent. No. Disagree, hard pass. I'm not just saying that because I'm attached to being a living thing and I don't want to die or something. Consciousness is not an emergent property of dead shit. Doesn't work that way. If I wasn't a non-dualist, I would be a panpsychist. I'm not a panpsychist, but if I wasn't what I am, I would be a panpsychist. I would be in that spectrum. But I don't believe in that one either. I think that they're trying really hard to not be spiritual. That's what it sounds like to me. When it's panpsychists sound like people who they don't want to be spiritual, so they're trying to argue against it, but still incorporate spirituality without meaning to. If there is a divine being, it is not a deity at all. If there is a deity that created the earth and lords over the earth, picked this one planet out of all the bazillions in the universe to be its focal point, and built this place for us, to us, blah, 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 to do something, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's really great. As, you know, I know a Christian would say, well, if you don't believe that, the devil got to you. Nice circular reasoning you got there, pal. But if there is divinity, which I believe in, and when I say belief is a terrible word. I hate even having to use it because it's not a belief. It's like when you've disobjectified and all that remains, that's the divine. When you've negated all that is not real, all that remains is awareness, is Satchidananda. Existence, consciousness, and bliss. That's all that's left. There's something there. That is the divine. Whatever that is not a deity. A deity is a mask that wears. So is there a Christian deity? As an egregore, 100%. Is there a satanic entity? As an egregore, 100%. You are a kind of egregore, for fuck's sake. If you understand what an egregore is, what its origins are, that it's basically tulpa, you understand these terms, you're going back to India again, by the way. Go back to India somewhere in the Indian subcontinent, by the way. So frustrating. I might as well just say, like, fuck all the shit that I'm saying and just go to India and just listen to people. You understand these terms, what they really imply. You're an egregore too. It's just your idol is a piece of meat that moves around. Instead of being a little idol on a countertop or something like that, you have an idol that's made out of meat that walks and talks. All is egregore. I don't mean egregore, the angels. I mean all is egregore. All is tulpa. All is thought form. All is that. That doesn't mean the universe is ideal. It just means that idealism is a fundamental part of it. If you put away all of the ideals about what you think you are, if you silence the egregore completely, if you disobjectify that, if you negate that, you're left with divinity, the soul. And there is only one soul encapsulated by this and these ideas. That soul is the divine. You are the divine, and part of the divine has been bounded by ideology. It's not a real boundary. It's not a real gate. It's not really blocking. Like the soul that is me is the same soul that is you, but there is a conceptual boundary put around it. like drawing a line on a piece of paper, like drawing a circle. If I take a piece of paper and I draw a little circle on a piece of it, I didn't separate the paper from itself. I didn't cut the part out. It's still the same paper. There's just a line around part of it. That line around it is like the spirit, okay? So, I forget what I was getting at exactly, but when I approach Christians that are really bullheaded about, you don't believe in God, you're going to hell, I would say to them, I don't believe in your egregore. And only people who do are likely to imagine hell at all. Or heaven, for that matter. Not into it. It's not my thing, not my bag. You can go there if you want. That's the cycle of samsara you're talking about, my friend, and you don't even know it. You don't even know where it comes from. You don't even know that amen that you would say in church is which has been corrupted as it moved into Europe to and you don't even know this. You don't even know that it's supposed to be you don't even know that. It's not it's not praising God. It's finding God within. That's the vibration. That's it. Oh, if only you knew. If only you knew where your whole shit comes from, damn would you be different about it. And this is why I don't like to be too critical, although I'm sounding quite critical. I don't like to be too critical because they don't realize that they've been propagandized by a slave religion that has been designed to keep them in servitude forever, that's rooted in monarchistic brutalism, literally. Designed to brutalize people and put them in a box and keep them there forever. Not just in this life, but forever. I wonder how many incarnations you need to go through. Think of an incarnation like, imagine you have a bucket, right? And it's glued to the ground, so you can't pick it up and dump it out. And it's filled with shit. How do you empty that shit? Well, you got to hose it down and just keep filling it with fresh water until eventually the water runs clear. That's like reincarnation for a lot of people in a lot of ways. I'm not buying into that exactly, but if I was, that's how I would describe it. This constant flushing. You just got to be flushed of all this bullshit that you put in yourself. How many generations, how many times do you think it takes? How long do you think it takes? The mind virus of Abrahamic religions, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, is stunning. But especially Christianity and Islam. Stunning how effective it is. Creating fanatics and fundamentalists and people who want to kill one another because they say a prayer differently. You know, it even says in the Bible, judge by their fruit. The fruits of these monotheistic Abrahamic religions are absolutely terrible. Oh boy. Anyway, I'm doing enough criticizing right now. Yeah, Alexander C says reincarnation is de-shitification. Yeah, it's kind of what it is. So did I miss any attention grabbers here? Why it says define divinity? Nope. The moment you define divinity, it is not divine anymore. Tatvamasi, my friend, look up the statement. And neti neti. That's it. Those two statements is all you need. Not this, not that, and that thou art. Done. You can't define divinity. You just can't do it. Whatever you would say would be inferior to it. It would be, the best you can do is observe its nature. You can say the divine exists. The problem, though, with that is to imply that anything else could be possible. If the divine exists, then that's it. It becomes moot. right? So even saying that it exists is an inferior statement because it implies that there is a possibility that it couldn't. Of course it does. That's all there is. It exists. It is conscious. Well, of course it's conscious. If it wasn't, you wouldn't know about it. Because it's you, stupid. So even saying that is a moot statement. It implies the alternative is possible. It's not. You're here asking the question. Done. It is blissful. Bliss is often misinterpreted as like pure happiness and joy without sadness. Not quite. Bliss is someone who is like, think of more of an orgiastic, like a sadomasochistic orgy kind of bliss. There's pain and pleasure mixed in there. There's definitely pain in there. Bliss is not just pure happiness. Bliss is like the happiness you get from being fulfilled even in pain, right? That's a tough sell for a lot of people, but trust me, it exists. So there's no defining the divine. It just isn't. And that is why it's called mysticism or mystery schools and mystery this and enigmas that, and because it's not really. This is the problem materialists have. They want to be able to use Aristotelian logic to define everything and say that's what it is. The problem is that's just a model. That model points at something that is not the model, though, right? Actual reality is not the model. They're not the same thing. So you can model reality using Aristotelian type logic. Of course you can. But that model is not reality. That's why you get like these mathematicians that claim to be scientists that say that they can, yes, their math works. They can predict a lot of shit. But when they start saying the universe is math, they start to lose the plot a little bit. Or at least that may be true, but that Maya is math. If that's what you want. Maya would be the math that they're talking about. But the absolute divine is not mathematics, guys. Certainly not. No. Absolutely not. Boy, I'm missing a lot of stuff here. All right. Luminostic says there's an intelligence intertwined throughout everything. That is all. Yeah, I mean, different words, you know, some things that are discussed in this depend on your definition of words. The way I define intelligence may not be the same as what you mean or what other people mean. To me, intelligence is something that is observed, that is not a thing that is done. Intelligence is the happenings inside this bloop right here. Intelligence is not synonymous with divinity. Divinity experiences intelligence. I'd put it like that. The divine is beyond intelligence. Intelligence is a paper-thin veneer over what it is. That doesn't mean that this reality doesn't have intelligence within it. It absolutely does. So in that sense, I agree with you. There's an intelligence to all of this because you're looking through your intelligence to see it all, right? You're looking through intelligence right now to comprehend all this. So I'm not trying to split hairs. It's an interesting statement that I sort of agree with, but it might depend on the meaning of the words that you're using. And it's an important thing to realize is like, if nothing else, the point of that statement is nothing around you is dead. That's a key takeaway. We live in such a, unfortunately, mechanized, industrialized, modernized society that everything's so sterilized. And we are taught to believe that this soda can's a dead thing. Well, it's not. Even if it was, it's teeming with life. There's life all over it. You just don't see it because it's small. But this idea that a rock can't be alive in some way, they don't even have a definition for life that actually makes sense. Like, what's the line between alive and dead? Like, there's a video somewhere where they have like a microscope, they're showing a cell dying, and that guy Hank, whatever, who does, you know, I don't know, he's a bit of a douche. What's that YouTube channel he's got? He's got a couple of them. Oh my goodness. I used to watch him a lot, and it's just, ugh, enough with the freaking, you know, whatever, globalist mentality people. Anyway, It's a video where he's watching it and they're showing the cell dying. Like it's punctured, it's starting to just ooze out. And it's a cell. It's a little single-celled organism. And it's squiggling along. It's trying to do its thing, even though its body is disintegrating. And then finally, and just finished, gone. And you watch this happening. And you're looking at this thing that, for all intents and purposes, is a little machine. Right? Everything it's doing is reflex. It's not intellect in the usual sense. Now, the Aristotelian mind would say that all of our intellect is technically a bunch of reflexive things that just happen to emergently turn into intelligence. Like all of these reflexive things happening together turns into intelligence when you get enough of it happening. It's like having enough monkeys in a room typing, they eventually do Shakespeare type of a mentality. You know, fair enough. Like it's algorithms running inside meat. So you're watching this thing and it's just sort of plodding along and it's trying to do whatever it does and it's disintegrating and it's still reacting to its environment, even though it's half of it's like gone already, you know? Just the stuff on its insides becomes its outsides. And it really makes you ask questions. How does that, like, it's alive, it's not alive. It's alive, it's not alive. What? Isn't it the same stuff? Well, remember what I said to you before about the soul being an encapsulation that is not a literal encapsulation like the cell, but symbolically is like the cell. When there is a form around it appears captured, but it's not really. It's permeable, right? Because the other part of that cell lesson is that cell is exchanging itself with its environment even when it's alive. So that's the whole meaning of, like, when it goes pop, it's dead, it's alive, it's dead, it's alive, it's dead, it's alive. But when it's alive, prana, shall we say, the flow of life goes through it all the time. The matter in the universe flows through that little cell. Its membrane is porous to certain things. The atoms and molecules that make up its body are exchanged with its environment constantly through its life. It divides and becomes new cells. And all throughout that stuff, it's got to exchange itself with its environment like the ship of Theseus. So, what the fuck? How come that's alive and that's not? Science will never be able to answer that question because to them, life is only a process. It is not reality itself. They understood what we're talking about, what I'm trying to talk about. They would realize that this is not dead. This is life. This is life. I sound like that, like food is life. This is life. This is life. This is life. This is God. This is God. This is God. This is God. God, God, God. Everything is God. Lift any rock, God's under it. Well, isn't that what Christians tell you? See what I mean? It's like, it's right there in front of everybody. And because the mind virus, people don't get it. It's there in front of everybody. This idea that something's only alive because it fits, it looks like a little ball and it wiggles around, that's life, this is why they have the philosophical problems that they have. This is why they have, I'm not a big fan of morality in the dogmatic sense, but from the compassionate sense, morality is not that big a thing. It's not that hard. If you're compassionate, if you understand everything is alive, that everything is the divine, compassion comes, it's second nature at that point. Doesn't mean you don't hurt people, doesn't mean you don't, it just means that you see in everything else what you see in yourself. I mean, I made a joke about it sort of with a video like the compassion of Stone about not killing flies and shit. But my wife and I, we're hilarious. We escort most bugs out of the house if we can help it. Yes, even the ones that annoy people. Because even if I know that it's probably better for it to swat at it, a part of me goes, oh man, I feel like that could be me. I'll still swat at it though. It's definitely different when you realize the divine is in all things. But the natural order is that flow. Life is everything. The stars are alive. The empty space is alive. It's all living. It's all life. Not just because it's potential life, it is life. It is life. It just hasn't turned into the forms that we expect yet. But it is all life. Like an acorn. So an acorn is not an oak tree, but it implies the oak tree. An acorn is an oak, but it's not an oak tree. And an oak tree is an acorn. It's just not an acorn yet, right? It's sort of like that. The air is a human being. It just hasn't gotten into you yet. Everything is life. It just hasn't necessarily filled this shape yet. Everything is the ocean. It just might not be waving a certain way yet. There's no ripple or whirlpool that looks like life there. It's all the same ocean. So a whirlpool is the great example that's used in a lot of mystical traditions, a whirlpool, because a whirlpool is made of water. It's made of the same thing. It's not really a thing. It's a behavior of something. Life is a behavior of the universe. It's all the universe, all alive. It's all life. So in that sense, it's beyond connected. The problem we run into as human beings is because of our egoistic nature, we look across the divide, look across the abyss at other people. And we go, if we're all divine, how come I don't know what they're thinking right now? If it's the same conscious in both of us, if it's the same soul in both of us, why don't I know that? Why don't I have their knowledge in my head? Why don't I think their thoughts? Why are my thoughts mine and not theirs? There's a lot of little explanations for that. None of them are fully satisfying to someone really hung up on it. But my favorite argument about it is simply to point out that there's plenty of times in your life that you were objectively present that you have no knowledge of. But you would never say you weren't there for it. I want everybody sitting here right now to go back to your earliest memory. Can you do that? Everybody think of your earliest memory right now. What's the first thing you remember about your life? Now go one day before that. Can you do it? Of course not. Does that mean you weren't there? Of course it doesn't mean that. You just don't remember. The same thing applies to this problem. Just because you don't know what someone across from you at a table is completely thinking and feeling doesn't mean it's not you. It just means you don't remember it. It just means that your attention is not there right now. That's all it means. The idea that it must mean that it's not you, that's a bridge too far. It doesn't mean that that's not true. It just means that it's not true, like implicitly. An objectivist, a materialist would say, I know I'm not you because I don't have your thoughts. I would point out that conundrum and would say, look, I'm not saying it proves that you are me, but it certainly means that it's possible that you could be and just don't know it. Of course, they would say, well, that's too much of an assumption. Your whole worldview begins with a bigger assumption than mine. You assume that anything exists as you see it. Meanwhile, your science tells you it doesn't. Even your science tells you the same thing I'm telling you. It just wants to tell you it's math. Anything but something that might be misconstrued as spiritual or living. Anything but that. Anything else. Anything else but that. Why? Here's the secret. We're getting into globalism now. They don't want you to know about what I'm saying to be true, because they can't do to you what they're doing to you if you realize the truth. If you realize all is the same divine, that all is living, that all is this and all is that, if you had a full understanding of it, they couldn't coerce you the same way. For one thing, the threat of death, while still stinging, and you would still do a lot of things to avoid it, it would be a little bit harder to coerce, especially if you had fully awakened to it. Now, I don't claim that myself. I've had full awakening moments, but that's not the same thing. I don't live an awakened life, by the way. I'm not some kind of Zen monk that's like constantly aware of my divinity. No, I've tickled that a few times. I've crossed that threshold plenty of times, but I have not. I don't live that. My ego's still well intact, guys. Obviously. But if I was, fear of death would mean nothing, because I would know in every moment that, and I do know it, but it's like, you know, there's still, if I'm really being honest, if someone put a gun to my head and said, do this, I would do quite a few things before I would say no. Like, there's quite a lot I would do if you put a gun to my head. Let's just be honest. Most of you would say the same thing. There's a lot of things I wouldn't do too, but you know what I'm saying. But if everybody truly understood their divinity and the divine in everybody else, it would be a lot harder to coerce us into doing shitty things to one another. It's a lot harder to convince somebody to go kill and steal and rape people in the next town if you feel like those people are somehow related to you. And even more so if you realize that we're all the same divine being. Like, if you have genuine compassion and you look across that gap and see yourself reflected back at you, it's a lot harder to do harm to somebody without a good cause. Now, you've got to have a damn good reason. I know I'm sitting here with all this evil, spooky, dark-looking shit. I'm very pacifistic. I always have been, before I even became into this stuff. I don't curse people willy-nilly. I don't do that. It's just not what I'm into. Every once in a while, so a rabid dog needs to be taken down. Totally different mentality. Yes, I can be sadistic about it too, but point is, rabid dog, different story. Rabid dog is, it's me or you. You know, I'm gonna probably choose me, right? That's what it really boils down to. If you have a rabid dog walking through your neighborhood, it might have been your dog. You might still love that dog, but because it's rabid, you got to put it down or get it out of society or whatever your solution has to be. Either way, you got to do something drastic about it. You can't just let it run around and enable it to hurt everybody. So true compassion doesn't mean that you do nothing or that you turn the other cheek and let people be idiots to each other, but it does mean you generally leave people alone. So it's a lot harder for them to manipulate the world if everybody had the same kind of view. It'd be really hard to get people to rob and steal and go to war if everybody saw the other side as basically themselves. And it would be a lot harder to convince you to do anything, because even if they put threat of life, threat of murdering you, you could look at them and say, yeah, but I know I'm not this. It would suck to lose this, but I'm not really losing it, am I? Because I'm not this. This is a thing that I'm watching. This is like a movie I'm watching, and it'd just be the main character dying. And if that happens, well, maybe that's a better story that way. Sure, go fucking do it. Give me your best shot, bitch. In fact, that's a story Alan Watts tells a lot about Buddhists in ancient Japan going to Japan and confronting the local lord, the daimyo, and telling them that they could give them the secret of being totally fearless. And the daimyo would test him. He would draw his sword on him. And if he flinched, he knew he was full of shit, and he would be within his rights to kill him. And if he didn't flinch, if he killed him, then he would be the dishonorable one. So it was like a cool test, because all the Buddhists had to do was not flinch. So it's sort of a game a little bit. In a way, it was rigged in the Buddhist favor. So it's a little bit of a ploy going on here. He didn't actually have to be fearless of death, but yes, in a lot of ways, a lot of you see that a lot in Buddhism. sort of acceptance of whatever is. Doesn't mean you don't try to heal the sick and stop wars and fight to defend yourself. It just means that when it's your time to go, you go. You don't take it too hard. Yeah, interesting shit. Anyway, I'm musing on this. I'm not really making a point here. I'm just ranting. Yeah, Murdered Son, I agree. All is the divine at play. And when we say play, we don't just mean game, we also mean theater play. I think both words are appropriate. One of my favorite analogies is the game of hide and seek or the Cosmic Masquerade game. Imagine a giant masquerade party, and the divine is going to this masquerade ball and has drank a lot of punch and has forgotten that it's literally everybody at the ball. And it's wearing a whole bunch of masks, and it doesn't know that it's behind every mask. And that's kind of what reality is. It's kind of a stretch, but I kind of like that one. Murdered Son's talking about swatting flies. I like that. I put more intent behind swatting, imagining its rebirth being favorable towards realization of Godhead within itself. Also, Krishna said not to lament death, which is definitely a difficult lesson. My only issue with that, though, is this implication that somehow it's inferior or bad not to know your divinity. And I think that the full implication of all of this is the divine at play is that there is an objective perhaps to the game, so I'll give you that. Maybe you're right a little bit. Maybe the objective of the game is to wake up and realize you're God. I'll give you that as a maybe. I'll put that in the, like, I won't argue that one. I'm going to say, let's watch and see. That might be it. But I will say that all games need a goal, right? All games need to have a victory condition, a losing condition. Even a sandbox game has goals you make up for yourself. Like you don't just randomly running around punching trees and not have a goal in mind. Like when you're playing Minecraft, right? You got to have a goal. You can't just randomly play. You got to have something you're trying to do. So yeah, I would say that the divine probably does set goals into the game. But the game itself, the objective of any game is not to do the goals. The objective is to have fun, to be fulfilled, to be at bliss. That's it. That's why often when I ask people, you know, what is the objective of hide and go seek? And you get different kinds of people will answer it differently. One group of people, the one that don't get it, will say, well, the objective of hide and go seek is for one person to cover their eyes, and they're the ones who are going to seek. And they win if they find the people who hide, and everybody else has to hide while he's counting. And if they manage to get away, then they win. That's the objective of the game, is to win. Nope, not the objective. The objective is to have a good time, motherfucker. That's the objective. Haven't you been taught that? Good sportsmanship and all that kind of good shit? The objective of any game is to have a good time. The rules and the goals matter, but only so much as they give direction to the game. So, in your game right now, Murdered Son, as you're playing this game, your goal is to feel really good, maybe, just projecting here, is to feel good about helping elevate that soul. Be like, I didn't just murder it, I helped send it on its way to a better place, and I'm trying to be better too. And so it's this goal of improving. Well, Alan Watts had a lot of fun stuff to say about improvement. Very good stuff about improvement. But obviously the answer isn't to just be and not care either, right? That doesn't seem right either, does it? To just swat the fly and not give a shit. That doesn't quite feel right either. I will say this much. I like your idea. I might even do it a little bit. I like that idea. I think that's really good because, you know, like when you go hunting, right? And you look at that animal that you killed or whatever, you go fishing, same thing. And you look at that dying or dead animal. And I see Atropa said the same thing. Atropa, what's going on here? Is your brain in my head? I didn't even realize that you said, yes, it's unfortunate. Just like when your animal is suffering, you must end their suffering one way or the other. You know, when you go hunting and you're confronted by a dying animal or a dead animal, I don't know what it is. Some people don't give a shit. Some people, it's like opening a refrigerator to them and taking out a soda. It's about as consequential to them that they killed something. Maybe they get a little bit of an endorphin rush and excitement from it. When I see that, I look in their eyes, even if they're dead already. And if I don't see the light in their eyes, then I feel one way. And if I see the light in their eyes, I feel worse. I do feel not a guilt, I feel a pain. And I want to end that suffering immediately. I almost want to scream, I'm sorry. Even when I'm chopping up my fucking lettuce. I'm not that much of a softy, guys. Trust me, you piss me off, you'll find out that I'm not. But when it's something innocent, though, if it's something innocent, I am a softy. If it's not in it, and you can ask my wife, when it's something that's not innocent, I'm a sadistic, evil son of a bitch. I would be a great demon in hell. Believe me. You'd be like, give me the laundry list of what they did. Oh, he fondled a bunch of kids. All right, get the meat slicer. Okay, we're going to run them through the meat slicer infinite number of times until Googleplex years. Go. Zing, zing, zing. I would love it. I would have a great time being that guy. I can be very sadistic when I've pissed somebody off, when somebody's pissed me off. But an innocent, that's what makes me mad, when they suffer. So, but I also recognize the circle of life. I recognize that you must eat, you must kill to live. And so I'd be a great vegetarian, but meat tastes too good. And I'm too much of a carnivore. I couldn't go full vegan, but like I feel sick if I don't have meat. But when it is time, and I think everybody should go hunting once in your life, even if you're a vegan. I think everybody should go hunting once in your life. Everybody should take a life with the intention of eating it at least once in your life. I think if you don't do that, then you don't know what goes into it. It might make you more reinforced in your veganism, or it might make you feel more a part of nature to know. The worst thing in the world is that we sit here eating industrialized food that's under wrappers. We don't know where it comes from. Meat is meat. It's not a cow, a pig, a horse, or whatever. It's just meat to us. It's a product. It's not an animal anymore by the time you get it. It's a slab of protein that looks like red shit. If you've never gone out once and killed to eat, obviously Susan Majicki, I'm not recommending people kill people. You must, once in your life, not for the thrill of the hunt even, because you need to be consciously aware of that circle of life that happens. You need to consciously insert yourself into it. For some people, killing an animal isn't what they should do. They just garden. I'm not going to say that I'm not going to criticize that instead. I will say at least you're doing that. I'm going to say, but I think everyone should go hunting at least once. Hunting or fishing. At least once, you need to take a living animal, not just a carrot, and you need to be responsible for its life and death. Because you got to realize, even if you're a gardener, you are responsible for a lot of animals dying. You just don't realize it. A lot of people don't know how much that they stress or kill animals just by having a fucking garden. If you understood what goes into keeping that pest free so you can eat your stuff, you're depriving a lot of territory for a lot of buggies and animals and things that normally would be living there, especially a factory farm. Forget it. When someone says, I'm a vegan, I'm much better I don't kill animals. Do you have any idea how many rabbits and fucking squirrels and shit get murdered so you can have your corn and your other food that you say, oh, I don't eat animals? How many bugs? You know how much insecticide? You know how much poison you're putting in the earth? Yes, I know. They'll tell you that dairy is more bad for the environment. I get that. I'm not disagreeing with that. But I am saying, if you think that you're somehow not hurting Mother Nature when you have GMO crops that can't grow without special... Dude, you have no idea. You have no idea how bad it is. You have no idea how bad the industrialization of food is. And it's not just for meat. People go, oh, well, we should all go vegan. It's so much better. It's so much more humane. You don't know what they're doing to the soil. You don't know what they're doing to the environment just to put cabbage on your fucking table. I just watched this interview Russell Brand did with, I forget her name, this Indian woman. I put it on the Gilded channel. What's her name? Vandana Shiva. And she's a great environmental activist and author, and Russell Brand interviewed her. Fantastic interview. A lot of it's stuff that I knew a little, I didn't know to that extent. And I think she got a few things a little idealistic on a few issues, but I think she's in the right direction. And I was watching that and I'm like, man, if more people understood just how much damage they're doing to our environment, just even to put regular, you know, and it's not, they don't necessarily have to. They don't have to do it that way. They're doing it that way for reasons that gives them control, not because it's better for feeding people. There are natural ways to do these things. So, you know, people need to understand. People need to understand just how connected you are. Not just to the earth or whatever, how connected you are to everything in the universe. And you can't see all the tendrils and how far they go, but they go everywhere. You know, when you see like a picture of like Hubble or the new James Webb Deep Field pictures, you see like all these cool dots, you go, wow, those are universes over there. You don't realize those universes are part of you. Yes, you are no longer causally linked by the light cones that you share now because you're so far apart, but you share the same origin. You both influenced each other forever. The same thing that was the birth of you was the birth of that far enough back. You have the same origin. Ultimately, there was a point in history where every other point was touching every other point, guys. It all came from the singularity of the Great Big Bang, if we believe in that story. It was all the monad once upon a time long ago. Once upon a time, it was all the monad, and it still is. It's just no longer necessarily causally linked, that's all. But it is linked if you go back far enough. You go back far enough in history, every point in the universe was touching every other point in the universe. So the most distant galaxy you can imagine, and then 10,000 times further than that, had an effect on who you are now. And you have an effect on it. You just don't realize it that way. You're limited in the little here and now. If you had the divine mind, if you could absolve yourself of your mortal mind, you'd realize that. Not just intellectually, but you'd feel it. This is why they often use the metaphor of someone meditating. You see them like flying through space and shit. There's a reason for that. You feel a connection to everything. You do. You don't have intellectual knowledge of it. I don't know what people like, what the favorite ice cream is on Alpha Centauri 45 and 7 galaxies over, but I do know that it's there. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what they call it, but I know it's there. You can do a little experiment. This is why I like meditation. So, well, I shouldn't even say meditation. Meditation doesn't mean anything. This is why I like, transcendental meditation. When you fully negate everything and you get into an emptiness state, and you're sitting there in total silence and you still have an awareness of there being a being. You just don't know its details. It's oblivion, it's obliviousness, but it's still awareness. And you realize that goes forever in all directions. There is no edge at all. And you realize that even the most distant conceivable thing is within that awareness. You don't come back from that without having like a religious experience, guys. So someone said they watched Russell Brand. They didn't see that interview. I'll see if I can give you the link in the chat. Actually, it's on BitChute. I don't know if he put it on his regular channel. I got to be careful. No, don't play it. I'm gonna get. Okay. Hopefully, I don't get copyright struck now. There we go. Of course, I had autoplay on. So, I mean, I don't endorse every last thing Russell Brand says, but I will say I don't hear many things I disagree with. I think he downplays his left-leaning stuff a little bit, but I think he's also one of those people that is like so many others that are going, I'm left, but I'm not this insanity left. Like, you know, and like I guess he's a socialist, but I think the kind of socialist he is maybe a little bit more, I don't know, not my enemy type of socialist, if you will. I think his type of socialism is entirely compatible with my ideas. It's just that it would be, he likes decentralization. Well, in a perfectly decentralized system, it almost doesn't matter what you do. As long as you have a Bill of Rights or something to protect everybody, decentralization is the answer. You can do whatever you want. I've often said to people like, look, I am not a communist. I never will be. But if my ideals of government and society were upheld, the communists would have a chance to live their experience. So long as they didn't force it on anybody else, you could set up your communes and your socialist communities and whatever else you want to do. So long as it's voluntary and decentralized, I don't care. As soon as you centralize shit, I got a problem with it. And what I mean by that is, like, I'm not saying I'm a total anarchist, but I am saying that the more centralization, the more tyranny, always. You need to have some element of centralization to make sure it doesn't go off the rails. So you need a little tyranny. I'm a minarchist by nature. I'm not a total anarchist. But you need decentralization. Right now we have too much centralization. And that's what globalism is. It's centralization of the global order. It's not decentralized. You may think nationalism's fascism. Nationalism by itself is not fascism. Fascism is an extreme form of nationalism. Nationalism, perhaps with a global Bill of Rights, could work just fine. A bunch of separate nations doing their own thing with a certain Bill of Human Rights would be a good thing. America the planet, if you will. The founding principle of America, I mean. Not the justice system, not the shape of the government, just the founding principle of a constitutional world republic. Wouldn't be a bad thing if they wanted to do that. Where you have a whole bunch of countries, each one with their own rights and culture and way of doing things, their own laws, their own this, their own that, total sovereignty, but they got the same basic human rights. Wouldn't be a bad idea. I could get behind that, but that's not what they want to do. That's not what globalism is. Globalism is, we'll tell you what to do, and you'll fucking like it. That's literally like when people, I love when Klaus Schwab, like the recording of him and all these other things saying, you'll own nothing and be happy. That's exactly like when your parents used to scold you and be like, you're going to do it and you're going to like it. That's literally how it sounded to me. When I heard that, I'm like, I feel like I'm being scolded by an angry parent. We're going to take away everything that you love and you're going to like it. Dude, it's complete insanity. It's complete and utter insanity. And I'm not saying there's zero chance, but it won't prosper. It's not going to work. It's already been, the writing's on the wall, and that's what makes this the most dangerous time in probably recorded history, because never before has anyone on the planet had the ability to kill everybody on the planet with probably the push of a button. And I don't even mean nukes. I mean far worse. I mean chemical. I mean biological. So that means that the writing's on the wall, and if it really becomes obvious that they're going to get BTFO'd, I wouldn't put it past them to, even just out of spite. They've got doomsday bunkers. You don't. They're probably willing to Stone Age our asses and then come out in 100 years and rebuild civilization and become the new, Egypt and shit. Don't put it past them to be thinking that way. That might even be why they're so cocky, because they have the ability right now to press a button and most people on the planet will die within a year. If not like an hour. And I'm not saying that they're that absolutely powerful, but I am saying that they are powerful enough that I wouldn't put it past them to be able to do something like that. So we're looking at a situation in life where The peasants are revolting again. And unlike in the past where all they had were headsmen and armies and all this stuff, they have bioweapons, they have nukes, they have EMPs, they have a lot of power to do things. So as we push back, as people wake up, I do believe that there are people in control of things that we don't realize that are standing in the way, that are stopping them from doing what... I think there's a hidden war going on. I think there's a war between the hidden masters, if you want to know the truth. I think that there is a group of hidden masters, and there are a few that wanted what's going on, and there's a few that don't. And the few that don't just happen to be the really good chess players. And they actually, despite being in an asymmetric position, are actually winning. It doesn't look like it because the other side technically holds all positions of power. But the people are the ultimate power. We're the power that they're talking about. If you control that, if you sway that, if you've got your finger on that pulse, you've got the whole thing. That's the story. That's the premise of Dune. That's why Paul Atreides goes to Arrakis and inserts himself into their planetary myth about their Messiah. He didn't believe in, Shai Hulud. He didn't believe in a sandworm god or any shit like that. He certainly rode around acting like it though. And that's kind of what the hidden masters have always done. So, that's right, Stu. Globalization is centralized power. Exactly. And that's why I'm opposed to it. Like I said, a global Bill of Rights wouldn't be that bad. I could get behind that. Keep the rights, framed properly so that we can find new rights. I'm cool with that. I think that would be okay. I mean, I could be convinced otherwise, but I don't see what... That'd be like saying, oh, we're going to have a right, don't kill each other. Oh, okay, that seems pretty reasonable. I don't know. It'd be hard to argue against the Global Bill of Rights, wouldn't it? Maybe you could, but the hard part is getting everybody to sign on to it and uphold it. That's the hard part. What do you do when you get a country that doesn't, right? Look, humanity has a lot of evolving to do. We have our technology has raced ahead and our wisdom has not. However, the Great Awakening is underway, and I do foresee an eventual future. Really, there's only a couple of options. We either all die, or the globalists win, or they don't. If they don't win, there's really only a couple of ways that can go. There's really not that many in the deep future. There's not that many ways this goes. And I've said a bunch of times, the next 5 or 10 years are going to decide the next 1,000 for the human species. If we get the next 5 or 10 years right, we're going to be flying in space, traveling to different planets. We're going to have enlightenment. Everyone's going to realize the divine or something like that. It's going to be quite amazing, with its problems, of course. Maybe the singularity will happen, but it'll be a good thing. It won't be a dangerous, bad thing. But if it goes the other way, well, 1984 will come true. A boot stomping on a face forever will be the human's future. Period. Because we're entering into a period now where we're right at the point where if they keep going on this course, average human beings will no longer have freedom. It'll never happen again. They will be able to completely treat us like animals because they will have the technology and the power to shape humans from cradle to grave however they want. And if we don't do something about it, within our lifetimes, we'll start to see that really hit. It won't be 1,000 years from now. It'll be 10, 20, 30 years from now. By the time that most of us, by the time I'm gray and in a wheelchair or a rocker or whatever, that dark vision will be here. Close enough. It'll be right there. You'll see it. If the good guy side wins, it'll be another 100 years before we have like people on other planets and stuff, but it will happen. What's up, Eldoria? How you doing? That's right, Stu. Yeah, Gaddafi wasn't playing along. He dared to not be their puppet. I like the fact that they murdered him for killing our enemies. I find out later. Gaddafi was seen with his tanks mowing down the Taliban. Aren't they our enemies? Oh, all right. Or was it Al-Qaeda? Whichever it was at the time. He's mowing down Taliban Al-Qaeda forces in his own country. He can't do that. We must bomb the shit out of him. And in other news, Obama just bombed the shit out of the Taliban in Afghanistan. I'm like, what the fuck? What kind of drugs are you people on? If you didn't wake up in that moment, I guess you still had a ways to go, but if you were paying attention then and you didn't see that as really ironic and really stupid of them, like really bold-faced obvious, we're going to liberate Libya. I love the pictures of the before and after. I don't know how it's doing these days, though. I don't know, maybe it worked out, but sure seemed like it went more barbaric after Gaddafi was gone. I'm not even saying I like Gaddafi. He was a fucking, all kinds of shit. But, oh man. It's just like the whole, Rus versus Uke thing going on right now. Not saying that Putin's a good guy or that Rus is a good, but you can't tell me that the globalists don't want to protect Ukraine because they have money laundering. You can't tell me that's not what's happening. Of course it is. That's their piggy bank. That's their playground over there. They're pissed off because they're being attacked personally by all this. Whatever. Anyway, guys, I think we're winding down. For those of you who showed up late, I do apologize, but I'll be here every Thursday, as you know. So let's see if we can get one more good question in, and then we'll call it a night. It wasn't a very busy night. I didn't advertise this I advertised it earlier this evening, but I noticed that sometimes it's fickle getting people in here. Like last week there was like almost 60. And this week it was like barely 30. So it is what it is. I won't say that I do this for numbers, but I will say that when numbers are low, it's less inspiring. Oh no, the war isn't fake, Wyatt. There's definitely people shooting over there. That's for sure. It's just that who's shooting at what? I know I've seen that same thing where people were saying that there was no war going on over there. It's all fake. I will say that the fog of war and the level of propaganda means we don't know what's really going on over there. But I will say that our Western media is hyping it up and telling you it's worse in one dimension than it is. But they're probably covering up how bad it actually is in other dimensions. If it makes us look good, they'll show it. If it makes us look bad, they won't show. If they have to fabricate some of it, they will. If they want to make it look like Russia's steamrolling everybody and murdering everybody, then they'll do that. It seems to me that there's two realities. Really, there's three. There's the reality that they want you to believe. There's a reality that the opponents of those people want you to believe. And then there's the truth. That's usually what history looks like. There's the right side of history, the wrong side of history, and the truth. Yeah. Eddie says, why does it burn when I conjure? You must be using a little too much red pepper on your lust spell. It's supposed to go as an ointment on the candle. The candle is not your penis. So just change the order of operation a little bit so that the red pepper goes on after the penis touching part. Stu asks, what's your take on remote viewing? If the powers that be really use it, why can't they avoid wars or terrorism? I think remote viewing is overhyped. I think that prescience is very real. I have absolutely no doubt about prescience whatsoever. I've experienced it many times. Anytime you've had a really powerful synchronistic moment, you've experienced it. We've all done it. Doing it on command is a little difficult, though, because ego doesn't have control over any of this. You know, when you're looking at everything and going, I want to do that. Well, who's saying that? That's a reaction. That's not actually the will. The will comes before all reactions. You can't, like, I saw somebody made a comment on one of the things like, oh, I'm doing magic to make my will conform to desire. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? No offense. You're putting a cart before the horse there, buddy. Because your will is what's behind that, isn't it? Like, how do you make your will do something? That's psychobabble. That's not actual, that's like what some, you know, what you've been told because it sounds powerful and empowering. That's like saying, I'm going to step on the gas pedal to step on the gas pedal faster. Like, it doesn't compute. There's no rationality there. There is the will. There is the Tao. Period. Done. Complete. Finished. Done. Ego can either be in accordance with that or in opposition to that. When ego is in accordance to that, there is harmony. That doesn't mean that everything works out. It just means there's harmony, spiritual harmony. You're at peace with it. When ego is not in alignment with it, there's conflict and suffering. Remote viewing can happen, but this idea that an egoistic desire can set it up to happen on purpose, I struggle to believe in that. That's coming from someone who's had some very powerful prescient moments in my life. Literally, you speak it and it happens. Any sort of prescience, like, or remote viewing done on purpose, when it does work, it's not usually literal. When you do get a hit, it's symbolic and subjective. So when I say hit, I mean a success. When you have a successful remote viewing event, in my experience, which is not the most thorough, I haven't sit there and spent years practicing it, but the bit that I've dabbled in it and practiced with it, it is usually in a symbolic fashion, which means you don't get the launch codes to the missiles, right? But you might see that there are symbols that represent missiles there. Stuff like that. But you're also going on the assumption that countries actually go to war anymore. Until recently, they didn't. Countries were in lockstep with a globalist plan. You will notice that wars have ceased, and we have only had, in the last 30 or 40 years, really, the majority of conflicts have been proxy wars and police actions. Direct war hasn't happened really, not between the Western nations at least, in a long ass time. So what we would normally classify as war has been kind of eradicated. We just have little police actions and little things like that. And most of those things are engineered. And so proxy wars in particular, there's nothing to be prescient about. Both sides. So go back 500 years ago, 600 years ago. Kings didn't surprise attack one another. They would send them a letter and say, hey, we're going to invade you in March. Does that sound good with you? I'm not kidding. Look it up. They would agree upon a field of battle. They'd meet with their armies. You'd have battlefields that were used regularly. They'd meet and they'd fight. It was almost like a sporting competition. Yeah, they would try to outmaneuver each other and they'd try to attack supply lines and things would go haywire. And it wasn't all organized like a perfect little thing. I'm not trying to make it sound that way. But it wasn't a surprise. They would know. There was no surprise attacks. There were not really. You might have little like, such and so burned down that garrison in a surprise attack. Sure. But the wars were not a surprise. And we haven't had a surprise war ever. When people say like, oh, America had no idea World War II we were going to be drawn to World War II. You know, then we got surprised attacked at Pearl Harbor. Yeah, right. We didn't get surprise attacked to Pearl. If you believe that, you're an idiot. There's no way we did. Yeah, all of our aircraft carriers were just missing that week. Yeah, they were off and doing maneuvers. The most important ships in the fleet. Well, I don't know why they weren't there, but they just weren't there that day, even though there was, come on. So, see, this is the thing. They're beyond a lot of that stuff. What people don't realize, some people get superstitious about it, and they think that the powers that be use these fairy tale, pop culture magical references as reality. Like, oh, they have the men that stare at goats, and they have literal wizards that can cause weather and shit. No, if you understand what the mystery schools were teaching and what they eventually morphed and were corrupted into, none of that was really built into it. Not like that. Not like that. Not saying that there was no superstitious beliefs involved. It's just, especially as you get later in period, it's ultimately, they're all liberation ontologies. They're all enlightenment paths that teach you that the divine is the self, and this empowers you. When you no longer have the same egoistic mind, it doesn't mean you suddenly become a good guy. Some people's form of compassion is misguided. Let's be fair. Let's be honest. Just because you've realized you're God doesn't mean you suddenly have all the answers. It just means you look at life with a different set of eyes. That's all. So I'm sure a lot of these people, that went through the enlightenment path, the mystery school paths, they would have their ego death moment, and that would wake them up to a lot of things. And some of them would end up being worse, interestingly enough. Well, Stu, I mean, I've never sat and watched how they do. So he says, don't they ask a number of folks to do it and then check to see if they all provide the same or similar results? What you're really referring to, there's actually a thing that was put out. It's basically the same idea. And it's an interesting experiment where they take, it's like a website where they would ask questions, and then you would, along with everybody else, indicate your answer. And the consensus answer was then, checked against the thing, and like an algorithm was used, and then ended up being pretty accurate, actually. The collective conscious does seem to have some prescience to it. Let's be honest. But this idea, like, people take these things a little further than I think is justified. I think there's a little bit of element of fantasy and whimsy and sort of egoistic hope in there. I'm not, like, once you become a skeptic, it's kind of hard not to be a skeptic, even if you work with all these things. You can be pretty skeptical about claims. You kind of have to be. Think about it like this, okay? A lot of people consider me a conspiracy theorist. True. I would say that, in a non-negative sense, I am. But does that mean that all conspiracy theories are true? Of course not. Oh, there was no moon landings. No, we landed on the moon. Actually, we landed on the moon more times than they said we did. That's what I think. I don't think we landed less. I think we landed more. The Earth is flat. No, the Earth is not flat. Does that mean that there aren't some weird things going on that about space and the Earth that they don't tell us? No, there probably are some weird things about space and Earth that they don't tell us. But I think that at some point, some things are just too self-evident. You'd figure it out. So do I believe in magic? Yes. Do I believe that it causes the world to change? No. Do I believe that it's all psychological? No. Do I believe that psychology plays a major component? Yes, emphatically so. Do I think that, remote viewing is possible? Yes, but not in the sense that it is a skill that you can learn to rattle off and things like that. I think that prescience happens. Synchronicity happens. Prescience happens. And there are ways to align the ego such that prescience is magnified, noticed more often, etc. but that doesn't mean you can decide what prescience tells you. Think of it this way. You could be the most prescient person on earth and have no control over when it strikes. So you can improve the odds of prescience, that is, the ability to foresee the future and act on it, or enable it, or be the hand of God that makes it work, or whatever your language wants to be about it. But that doesn't mean that you can necessarily manipulate. Now, could governments get a whole bunch of people who have shown that they're good at prescience and use them for that purpose? They probably do. So I'm not even denying your premise. It's the sci-fi movie extreme that it's being taken by that question and example. And again, that's not an insult to you, in case it sounds like I'm being critical of the idea, not the question. I think it's a valid question, but I don't think that. So, does government or did government or will government, etc., do they do anything like men at stare goats and all this kind of stuff where they get people in a room and do that? Yes, I don't doubt it. Is it a major component of how they do things? Probably not. Is it something that they have down to a science? Probably. Is it something that they can use to predict the future? Is it something they can use to find lost keys? Think of it like this. You get a room full of people who are verified to have higher instances of prescience, right? Get a room full of those people. Ask them 50 questions. You're bound to get a hit on one of those questions. So what you do is you get that room full of prescient people and you ask them the most important questions, and sooner or later they're going to get a hit. Then you use that hit as your evidence. But because it's unreliable, it's not the centerpiece of your intelligence. It's just a piece of it. The actual way it manifests is not going to be the same for everybody. So, for example, when I have prescience, it's not a vision where I see things literally happening in a way that I can predict. It is a sudden just knowing. Just a sudden, I know this. I'll give it, like, you know when it really shows up a lot for me, especially growing up? It would be like if I was about to get into a fight or play fight with somebody. A challenge would come up. And the thing that was frustrating about it is even though I could predict a lot of the times, I still usually got in trouble because of it. So like I would be about to play fight with somebody, be like, you know what, they're going to get the better of me this time. And I'm not even saying I think that, I would know it without verbalizing in my mind. Just an awareness, this is going to go badly. And sure enough, it didn't go the way I wanted. How did I know? I don't know. Could I have changed things? Maybe, but I didn't. So, you know. In the end, you know, like I said, I do think that they use these things, but I don't think it's like a machine. I think the big mistake a lot of people make in our community of interest is that people think of it like it's a machine. I think there's a lot of pollution has been injected into the mystical side of these things. And things have been turned into superstitions, supernatural superstitions. Pop culture has think of it this way, all right? This is going to be a little bit of a base idea, but everybody here who's watching who's not a virgin anymore, who understands what real sex is like, when you compare that to pornography, for the most part, there's exceptions, real sex is not like pornography. When it is, it can be pretty fun, don't get me wrong. But for the most part, it's not the same. You don't do it quite the same. If you're doing it right, trust me, guys, if you think it's all about that pumping shit, girl, that's fun and all, but that's not, I'm going to stop because there's some youngins here. That's not the the best technique in the world. Okay? It's nice. That's not it. That's not where it's at. That's for you. That's not for her. Not to say that they hate it or anything. But anyway. Pornographic sex and real sex are not the same thing, right? Obviously, we know that. Another maybe less, perverse example for the youngins would be fighting. When you watch people fighting in a movie, when you watch a samurai movie and they're fighting with swords, that's nothing like a real sword fight. I'm telling you right now. It may be a little bit better because generally a lot of times samurai movies tend to be done by like traditional martial artists a little bit more. So it's going to be a little bit better, but that's not real fighting. You watch Rocky, is that boxing? No, that's not real boxing. It's pretty close looking, but it's not the same thing. Like you play a video game, like, oh, I could do that because I see them doing it. And you'll see people doing sword fighting, and you can tell when they've learned it from watching movies because I'll use this pen as an example. A real swordsman does smaller movements, and they'll move more with the arm, like from the elbow and stuff like this, and the body, okay, like this. A TV swordsman does this. Notice the difference? Big, wide telegraph moves. Real swordsman is going to be little movements like that. That's what a real swordsman does. So it's the same idea. Okay, so what am I trying to get the point at? Pop culture exaggerates the shit out of everything, and people believe it. And people think that that's what magic's supposed to be like. They watch a good movie about magic. Eddie, you fucking card. Ironically, real sex is more like movie sword dueling. Yeah, I guess you kind of... I mean, yeah, because you got the big... Yeah, okay, yeah. Stu, you're talking the grinding and machine gunning bedroom action. Yeah, yep. So the magic that we see in modern occultism, unfortunately, here's the ego trap shit again, the blind shit again. The ego traps and the blinds are there to keep the low-hanging fruit or the shorter animals from getting the fruit on the tree. Okay, it's like an IQ test. The longer you beat your head against the wall trying to astral project into my house and curse me with, like syphilis or some shit, like you're just gonna stay there. Like that's your energy level. You're not gonna go above that for a long time. When you start to realize that that's Hollywood fantasy to a great degree, not to a complete, obviously, but to a very large degree, that's Hollywood fantasy, then you can make the next step. This is why people will notice that I poo-poo a lot of the works-based magic stuff. Not to invalidate it completely, but it's got to be brought down, not just one peg. It's got to be like right now, the online magical community is like a good 11 or 12 out of 10 on what they expect magic to be able to do. I see people constantly with total ridiculous magical thinking. I remember when COVID first came out and people were like, we're going to be casting spells to make it go away. Sure. For one thing, this is a fucking turning point in the timeline. You're not changing it. This is like an anchor that's in like an intersection of many timelines. You're not moving that out of the way. You're already here, right? This is like you're not getting out of this. Number one. Number two, like, I mean, people were like, oh, we're going to make a coronavirus egregore and we're going to kill that. And we're going to, I mean, all these things. And I'm not saying this to be critical of them. I get their reasoning. I get why they thought that would work. It didn't. The very hard-earned lesson of magic for me is it doesn't cause anything except realization of miracles. And people will say, well, that sounds like what I'm doing. No. When you do sorcery or thaumaturgy or theurgy, whatever your word for it is. So theurgy is when you're working with spirits and spiritual energies. Thaumaturgy is when you're trying to make miracles happen. I like to use the word sorcery versus magic a lot because magic to me has become kind of more muddled and muddied, and just trying to leave that behind a little bit more and focus more on the word sorcery, because sorcery is more appropriate. Sorcery is a great deal of it's an act of divination, prescience. And sorcery was often maligned because it was often a charlatan's act. But there was a time that, you know, people didn't do anything without consulting the bones, and that wasn't that long ago. Okay, a certain level of divination goes into it. In fact, people still do it. Big people. Sorcery has to do with fate, which is synchronicity, really. You know, Jung is interesting, but he managed to... Why I keep coming back to Jung is because Jung kind of looked at all these things and did what I'm doing. He sort of shifted definitions around to make them more rational sounding, but if you really look at Jung the right way, he just took old school mysticism and magic and superstition and recoined it into something more rational. He had everything from omens to spiritual beings to all of that shit. It was all in there. He just explained it in terms that were less crazy sounding. If you really look at, you know, that's why Jung's mystical more than anything. Jung's interesting for that. Yes, Eddie. And Willow, that's another thing I've tried to point out to people before, is pop culture is replete with hidden secret magic wisdom in it. Willow did I don't know who the hell was involved in writing Willow, but they knew some shit. And you can watch it on a lot of different levels. You know, when he tells Willow to pick the magic finger, and he's like, I was going to pick my own finger. Yeah, damn right. That's exactly the right answer. I knew that. That wasn't just because it's good in Willow. It was good. The bones tell me nothing. Of course they tell him nothing, because that's not what it's there for. It doesn't work that way. The bones don't say anything. The bones just open up your own intuition and give you insight. They don't, you know, level 1 card readers read the cards. Level 2 card readers interpret the cards. Level 3 card readers look past the cards. Level 4 card readers are just playing a game of cards while they're telling you what they think already. You know, if level 4 card, like I'm saying, like tarot card, level 4 tarot card readers, the cards don't matter what they say. They already know what they're going to say before they even pull them. Just saying, it's an act, some of it. And they already have a prescient idea of what the cards need to tell the person already. Just saying. I wiggle between a 3 and a 4 most of the time. Not always a 4. I wish I was. But I'm usually a 3 or a 4. I get 4s 30% of the time when I'm doing it professionally. So, Eddie, remember that. Level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. I think that should be a good soundbite. Level 1 card readers read the cards verbatim. They read the book, they copy it, they memorize it, they read the cards. Level 2, they interpret the cards. Level 3, they read beyond, they read through the cards, past the cards. Level 4, the cards are just something that they do while they're already predicting shit. Well, that's what I'm saying. Level 4 is level 5 is the same way. It's just level 4, they use the cards just as a prop. Level 5 is like a pendulum guy, or just someone who just sits there and thinks about shit. You're right. But yeah. Then I guess I'm mostly a level 5 because I don't use the cards that often. I do a tarot reading, like when I'm doing it, I'll do it like once, twice, 3 times a week. When I'm not, it could be a month between using them. There you go, Eddie. Good way to put it. Yeah. The cards, the ritual, whatever, give you permission to know what you already know. So here's the thing I tell people. When you're learning magic, when you're learning ritual, when you're learning sorcery, when you're learning all these things, never fall into the trap of thinking your ritual caused an outcome, because you're putting the cart before the horse again. even if I were to say that magic works that way, your ritual didn't cause it. It was your initial will to do it that caused it. Right? So it's ultimately it is your prescience, your decision to act on it. That's the seed. That's the magician card, guys. Hello. The fool, then the magician. The fool, no idea. No idea what I'm going to do. I don't know I need to do anything. Magician, going to do something. 2, the second card, priestess, action, taking, well, not action, but making a decision, deciding, choosing between different things, making a decision. And you follow through and you just go through the whole show. But the magic happens between the 0 and the 1. That's when the magic happens, between the Fool card and the Magician card. That's when the actual magic is happening. By the time you're aware of it, the magic's already done. That is, by the time you've decided to do a ritual, it's already done. Does that mean you're going to get what you did the ritual for? Maybe. Sometimes you're meant to do the ritual and be confused. Stu, I actually sell, go to my Etsy. My wife makes black mirrors. So black mirrors are a useful tool for to put it mildly, for meditation, for vision seeking, all of that. I use mirrors for a lot of things. Mirrors are one of my favorite tools. I almost always have a mirror. Even when I was younger, I always had something. So mirrors or black mirrors. Go to my Etsy. We sell triangular ones. They're actually very nice. My wife hand makes them out of a design I made up. And she executes them, and she's got some cool ones with some snake skin and shit on them now. They're actually really nice. If she was awake, I'd have her bring me one, but I think she's sleeping. So yes, Stu, check it out. I think you'll like some of that stuff. They absolutely do. They absolutely are a beneficial tool. Do you need them? No. I mean, you can scry with a bowl of water, dude. Get a dark bowl, put some water in it. Boop. Same shit. You don't need a mirror. Everybody's got one of these days, right? There you go, black mirror. Boop. Done. The ultimate black mirror is closing your eyes. Close your eyes. Black mirror. Boom. The way to understand all these things is they are props. They are props which you can elevate. Well, hello, puppy. What have you got there? Are you telling me what time it is? Yeah. Oh, you are so cute right now. Oh, I wish I could show everybody how cute you are. What is this? What did you bring me? A slip of paper. It's all slobbered on. My dog is saying it's time for me to go. So, guys, until next week, we'll be here every Thursday. I do appreciate everybody who showed up tonight. Anybody, I didn't notice any super chats, so if anybody sent one and I didn't see it, I apologize. I just scrolled up and saw one. Jay Sauber. Oh, Jay, I'm sorry I missed you, buddy. I must have been ranting when you sent that. I appreciate that. Jay, if you're still here, thank you. I'm sorry I didn't see it. I really appreciate that. Try to send you an email later, maybe, just in case. But for everybody who was here tonight, everybody who contributed, everybody who participated, gave me questions, I really... Oh, you're doing it again? Come here, Vienna. Come on, puppy. Drop it. Good girl. See, what my dog does is she will get my attention by picking stuff up off the floor that she's not supposed to have, and will bring it to me, or my wife. Look how slobbered this is. Oh, my goodness. Cutest little thing. Just give me a little bit, okay? I'm closing up. Yes, I know. I'm setting it up for tonight. So, all right, guys. I will see you all next week. I appreciate everybody. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your discussion. You don't have to agree with me. Just listen to me rant. That's part of the fun, is to inspire you. Maybe you'll see it my way someday. And if you don't, that's fine too. That's why I'm here. All right, guys. Until next time, check you later.